Chapter 868. As soon as Zi Yuan said this idea, Li Yundong was shocked. He subconsciously wanted to shake his head, but soon Zi Yuan said to him through voice transmission, "Li Yundong, although these two powerful magical weapons are the most precious magical weapons of the Linggong sect, they have been repaired by you. Now they naturally have your aura. Moreover, only your strength can compete with the mystical silver fox. If I were to control these two powerful magical weapons, I'm afraid that I wouldn't have enough strength. At this critical moment, I can't be hesitant. I should make a prompt decision." Zi Yuan's words were spoken in a hurry. Li Yundong thought about it for a while and immediately made up his mind. He nodded to Zi Yuan calmly. The two of them fought with the mystical silver fox while having sex. At this time, the benefits of having powerful magical weapons were shown. If there was no powerful magical weapon in front of them, if they dared to be distracted and talk in the face of the mystical silver fox, they would probably die without knowing how. At this time, although Zi Yuan's ninth heaven Zi Yuan silk was blasted away, it only took a blink of an eye for it to fly back. The most powerful part of this powerful magical weapon was not only that it could change and attack and defend, but also that it could not be burned by fire, soaked in water, torn by hand, or cut by a knife. It was almost indestructible. When the ninth heaven Zi Yuan silk flew back again, this time it turned into a long spear. The tip of the spear was like a pear flower in a rainstorm. It sprinkled a handful of spear flowers and pointed at the heart of the mystical silver fox. It was fast, fierce, and poisonous. However, the mystical silver fox almost didn't even look at it. When the tip of the spear was about to touch her skin, she stretched out her finger and flicked hard at the tip of the spear. In an instant, the spear made of the ninth heaven Zi Yuan silk flew out again. After the ninth heaven Zi Yuan silk was shaken away, it immediately flew back and turned into another weapon, pouncing on the mystical silver fox. For a moment, these 18 weapons changed one by one. They were like a piece of sticky candy, entangling the mystical silver fox tightly. The same was true for Zhou Qin's Chiwa. Zhou Qin's Vulcan's whip had been destroyed by the mystical silver fox as soon as they met, which shocked Zhou Qin. She did not dare to let the Chiwa take risks easily. She was very careful to cooperate with the others to attack. Once the mystical silver fox dealt with the Bahuang sword and the Liuhe sword, or the Cho Kong dealt with the ninth heaven Zi Yuan silk, it would come roaring and strike the mystical silver fox like lightning. At this time, Li Jiandong took a look at the field and saw that Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and Su Chan seemed to have the strength to entangle the mystical silver fox for a while. He gritted his teeth and the yang spirit went out of his body in an instant. He flew to the looming celestial glass mirror in the thundercloud and used his magic to drive this powerful magic weapon. At the same time he sat cross-legged in the air, flicking the burning thumb pot with one hand and pressing the purple gold disc with the other, doing three things at once. At this time, Zi Yuan also secretly transmitted her voice to Zhou Qin and Su Chan, telling them that they had to stall the mystical silver fox no matter what and buy time for Li Jiandong. Although the celestial glass mirror was a powerful magic weapon of the Linggong sect, it was not a powerful magic weapon refined by the cultivators of the Linggong sect. It was a personal magic weapon refined by Yin Zhiping of the Chuanzhen sect. The Chuanzhen sect was a cultivation sect that advocated the integration of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism among the Chinese Taoist cultivation sects, and colored glass was one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. Therefore, when Yin Zhiping was in Beijing, that is, Shentian Changnet Palace in the Yuan dynasty, he refined this supreme Taoist magic weapon with colored glass, one of the 7 treasures of Buddhism. However, when Yin Zhiping reached the golden immortal realm at the age of 70, he didn't care about the affairs of the world and passed all the magic weapons to his Li Zhichang. After Li Zhichang took over, the power of the Chuanzhen sect had reached a terrifying level. The power of the sect radiated throughout the Yuan dynasty, and the Yuan dynasty's territory was so large that it was unique in ancient and modern times. The power of the Chuanzhen sect radiated from Russia in the north to Vietnam and other countries in Southeast Asia. Such a large sect naturally aroused the fear of the rulers of the Yuan dynasty. However, because Li Zhichang was one of the 18 accompanying disciples of Jinren Changnet Chouchuji who accompanied him to see Genghis Khan, he had a deep friendship with the ruling group of the Yuan dynasty. Therefore, the ruler of the Yuan dynasty, Brother Meng, waited until Li Zhichang was old and weak and had no interest in worldly affairs before he initiated a large-scale debate between Buddhism and Taoism. This debate and battle was the most far-reaching event for Chinese Buddhism and Taoist cultivators. It directly led to the decline of Chinese Taoism and the rise of Tibetan Buddhism. In this battle, because the Chuanzhen sect was too powerful in the Taoist cultivation world, it also aroused the fear of other sects in the Taoist cultivation world. Therefore no other sect supported the Chuanzhen sect. Even the Jingyi school sat on the sidelines and watched the tigers fight. In this battle, Li Zichang brought the Tongtian glazed mirror and his disciples, Jinren Zhang Zijing, Barbarian Mr. Wang, Taoist record Fan Jing, Judge Wei Jiang, lecturer Zhou Zhili, and more than 200 people to participate in the meeting. It could be said that all the elites had come. Unfortunately, they met a person who could be compared with Wang Chongyang, Zhang Sanfeng, Zhang Daoling, and others. He was the strongest, greatest, and most amazing cultivator and great sage of Tibetan Buddhism in the past 1,000 years. Ba Siba. Ba Siba began to preach at the age of 8. At the age of 17 he took over the position of the leader of the Sakya sect of Tibetan Buddhism. At the age of 18 he went to Shuntian to see Kublai. Kublai brought his children to greet the 18-year-old Ba Siba with the etiquette of secular people greeting their masters. Then they offered a large amount of gold, silver, and jewelry, asking Ba Siba to perform tantric initiation for them. When Ba Siba was 20 years old, his cultivation had reached the pinnacle. At the age of 23 he led the second living Buddha of the White Sect, Karma Bashi, the imperial preceptor of Heshi, monk Wei Wuer, the imperial preceptor of Dali, the elders of Shaolin Temple, the elders of Mount Wutai, and the elders of Yuanfu Temple, and more than 300 people to participate in a meeting to fight against the cultivators of the Chuanzhen sect. This unprecedented debate and battle shocked the world. Both sides agreed that each sect would send 17 people to debate. If the Buddhists lost they would become Taoists. If the Taoists lost they would become monks. In the end, after this battle, Ba Siba almost single-handedly defeated the people of Chuanzhen sect. Then, Fan Jing and the other 17 people of Chuanzhen sect were ordered by Kublai to be sent to Longguang Temple and become monks. After this battle, Li Zichang's celestial glazed mirror also became Ba Siba's spoils of war. After this genius, the first nation master of the Yuan dynasty obtained this magic weapon, it was as if he had obtained a treasure. From it, he understood the mystery of space and time, life and death, and from it he also strengthened this magic weapon based on the original foundation of the celestial glazed mirror, so that it could penetrate time and space, see through life and death, absorb souls and other magical abilities. Ba Siba then passed away at the age of 46. Before he died, he told his disciple to return this magic treasure to the cultivators of Chuanzhen sect. However, after wandering for a long time, it finally fell into the hands of the cultivators of Lingong sect, and finally became the magic treasure of Lingong sect. The magic of the azure glass mirror was innumerable, but its greatest ability was that it could borrow power from the sky and forcefully project a person's soul, spiritual sense, and even memory into the mirror. It could freely create a mirror image that was almost exactly the same as the person in the mirror. If the person in the mirror image obtained a certain ability, the original owner would lose that ability. Even if there was a certain difference in strength between the two parties, the caster could forcibly project the body and soul of the other party onto the azure glass mirror. This would not only create a new puppet, but it could also instantly take away all the soul and life of the other party, turning it from a healthy living person into a cold and terrifying skeleton in an instant. Such a magic treasure could be said to be tyrannical and domineering. However, because the leaders of the Lingong sect had been kind, they had never used this magic treasure to do anything harmful. Therefore, although this magic treasure was fierce, it was not notorious. More people only knew that it had the ability to penetrate time and space. However, although the azure glass mirror was powerful, it actually did not have any actual combat ability, because it required the caster to pour Jinchi into it for a long time and hold it. During this process no one could interrupt it. Otherwise all the previous efforts would be in vain. Li Yundong's yang spirit held this magical Taoist treasure and shone the mirror on the mystical silver fox's body from afar. Immediately, a ray of colorful divine light shot down from it and followed the mystical silver fox closely. A figure immediately appeared on the mirror, but it was an extremely terrifying skeleton. The person outside the mirror was a lively beauty, but the person in the mirror was an extremely terrifying pink skeleton. Outside the mirror there was one life and one death, which was full of profound meaning. Li Yundong's Jinchi quickly poured into the azure glass mirror. He saw that there were waves of colorful ripples on the edge of the mirror. The skeleton in it was affected by these ripples. Gradually there was blood on the white bones and then there was blood. It seemed that it was slowly turning into a mystical silver fox in the mirror. The mystical silver fox had fled to Japan during the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period. How could she know that there was such a magic treasure in the Chinese cultivation world? She had been shown on by the divine light of the azure glass mirror. At first, although she felt a little strange, she didn't feel anything strange, so she didn't take the light seriously. But soon she found that Li Yundong's yang spirit had flown out of his body to the air to hold this powerful magic treasure. She immediately became very vigilant. Most of the powerful magic treasures had the ability to fight alone. However, if a powerful magic treasure needed a cultivator to spend a lot of time and energy to hold it, it could only mean two things. First, this powerful magic treasure was trash. Second, this powerful magic treasure was so powerful that it could only be fully released by a cultivator. How could the mystical silver fox believe that the powerful magic treasure in Li Yundong's hand was a trash magic treasure? She looked up with vigilance in her heart. Immediately, her eyes pierced through the heavy thunderclouds like lightning and saw a skeleton figure reflected on the spirit mirror. Gradually, the skeleton figure became full of blood. Although she still couldn't see its appearance from the figure and the position of the environment in the spirit mirror, it was clearly the mystical silver fox herself. Although the mystical silver fox had never seen this powerful magic treasure, she was a great master who had comprehended the mysteries of Buddhism and Taoism. At a glance, she saw this situation. How could she not know what had happened? The mystical silver fox was shocked, angry, and frightened. She knew that she had half a foot in the gate of hell. If she didn't destroy this powerful magic treasure, she was afraid that she would die on this powerful magic treasure. The mystical silver fox shouted angrily and pounced on Li Yundong like crazy. At this time, Ziyuan, Zhou Qin, and Su Chan also rushed to the mystical silver fox from three directions as if they didn't care about their lives. The victory or defeat of this fierce battle depended on this move. They had to stop the mystical silver fox. Otherwise they would lose everything and the whole cultivation world would be wiped out. As soon as the three of them moved, the three beautiful figures fought with the mystical silver fox. From a distance, they could see that the three of them were under the attack of the mystical silver fox's 7 golden tails. Their figures were faintly discernible like graceful birds. Although it was a fierce and dangerous battle, it also revealed a different kind of otherworldly beauty, as if three fairies from different worlds were fighting with a big demon king. This scene was the three immortals fighting the celestial fox, which would become a good story in the cultivation world in the future and be recorded in history. Chapter 869. The mystical silver fox had lived for more than 1,000 years. It could be said that she was old but not old. When she risked her life, her power was really earth-shattering. Others only took one more look at the mystical silver fox and were overwhelmed by her amazing momentum. They couldn't imagine how Su Chan, Ziyuan and Zhou Qin, these three beautiful girls, had the courage to stand in the way of the mystical silver fox. Although the mystical silver fox was facing three masters at the level of thunder retribution alone, in fact she still had to divert her attention to fight against Li Yundong's other powerful magical weapon, the burning thumb pot. This was the personal magic weapon of Fa Hai in the past, and it was also the supreme magic weapon of Buddhism. In the hands of the reincarnated Wisdom King, its power was so great that it could not be underestimated. It was also a great deterrent to the mystical silver fox. Although Li Yundong's yang spirit was out of his body and he was using all his strength to control the azure glass mirror, part of his spirit was still controlling the burning thumb pot. The 5 fingers of one hand flew like a blooming lotus flower, and the lotus leaves spread out. Every time his fingertips touched the edge of the burning thumb pot, a crisp sound would be heard, and a layer of visible white light spread out of the burning thumb pot. This layer of light had a strong effect of suppressing the soul and could absorb the demonic qi. Although the mystical silver fox's jinqi and spiritual energy were strong and solidified, it was not something that the burning thumb pot could absorb at all. However, when the layers of light rippled and moved on the body of the mystical silver fox, it also made her restless. Her blood and qi were boiling and she could not fully drive her spiritual energy and jinqi, so her strength was greatly reduced. If the mystical silver fox attacked Ziyuan, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and the others without any influence, Ziyuan and the others would die on the spot in a few rounds. However, with the burning thumb pot on one side, Ziyuan, Su Chan, and Zhou Qin had the space and strength to fight with the mystical silver fox. At first, Ziyuan and Zhou Qin, one on the left and one on the right, wanted to stop the mystical silver fox with magic weapons. However, even with the help of the Bahuang sword and the Liuhe sword, if they could stop the mystical silver fox with only the 9th heaven Ziyuan silk and the Chiwe, the mystical silver fox would not be the mystical silver fox. You almost there, when the 7 tails of the mystical silver fox were used, these powerful magical weapons could hardly get close to her. They were blocked by the golden fox tail from a distance. However, her figure did not slow down at all. She quickly rushed toward Li Jiandong. Seeing that the situation was not good, Ziyuan and Zhou Qin immediately chose the same way to deal with it without hesitation: close combat. Close combat was the most dangerous way to fight with the mystical silver fox. It required great courage to fight face-to-face with the mystical silver fox. But if he wanted to fight face-to-face with the mystical silver fox in close combat, it could no longer be described as brave and fearless. It was almost the behavior of a madman, which was equivalent to courting death. The danger of close combat was indescribable in words. Ziyuan and the others were all masters of thunder retribution. Every move they made had great power. Even if it was the mystical silver fox, if she was careless and was hit by Ziyuan, Zhou Qin and the others, she would be seriously injured. But similarly, if Ziyuan and Zhou Qin were hit by the mystical silver fox in their vital parts, it would not be a matter of serious injury, but they would be directly destroyed in body and soul. Such an unequal battle led to almost no cultivators in the world who dared to fight with the mystical silver fox in close combat. Therefore, when the mystical silver fox saw Ziyuan and Zhou Qin coming to fight with her in close combat, she was shocked. But then the mystical silver fox felt a kind of anger of being despised and offended. She was furious. Only 5 of the 7 fox tails were left to block the powerful magical weapons that besieged her. At the same time, 2 golden tails swept toward Ziyuan and Zhou Qin. Although Ziyuan and Zhou Qin were fast, they were not as fast as the mystical silver fox. In the blink of an eye, the 2 fox tails had rolled up in front of them. The golden fox silk on the tail stood up like steel needles, like a huge wolf's fang. It seemed that as long as it touched them, it could break people's bones and tendons. Ziyuan and Zhou Qin were shocked in their hearts, but at this time there was no turning back. They made up their minds and once again exerted their strength, rushing toward the front of the mystical silver fox, trying to get close to the mystical silver fox before the golden fox tail rolled up to them. Almost there. With this force, their figures disappeared in an instant. The 2 of them suddenly accelerated like missiles and rushed out a few meters like lightning, making the golden fox tail roll up the air. The mystical silver fox was stunned for a moment, and then became furious. The 2 golden fox tails exploded with a bang, releasing countless golden threads, chasing after Ziyuan and Zhou Qin like a spider web. Su Chan, who was standing to one side, saw it clearly. Seeing that Ziyuan and Zhou Qin were about to be caught up by the golden threads, she was so frightened that she shouted, "No!" At this time, she finally didn't care whether she would show her fox demon body or not. The little girl suddenly turned into an 8-tailed fox with fiery red fur. She used her 2 golden fox tails to roll toward the 2 golden fox tails of the mystical silver fox. The 4 golden fox tails swung together with a bang. Suddenly, countless fox silks were intertwined and tangled together. There was me and you and me. For a moment it was difficult to distinguish. The mystical silver fox had never dreamed that there would be 2 golden fox tails exactly the same as hers appearing in front of her. How dare they go against her? The mystical silver fox looked at Su Chan in shock, only to see that the fiery red 8-tailed fox was glaring at her with a ferocious face. 6 fiery red fox tails were hanging low, and 2 golden fox tails were twisting and dancing, entangling with her own 2 fox tails. When the mystical silver fox was shocked, Ziyuan and Zhou Qin had already approached her. One of them immediately moved like smoke and immortals, circling around the mystical silver fox from top to bottom, and constantly attacking her waist and ribs with the 8 trigrams palm. The 2 waists were where the kidneys were located, where the essence of the qi and blood was stored. If they were hit here, the consequences could be imagined. The 2 ribs were where the heart and lungs were located, corresponding to the place where the qi and blood were stored and the blood was transported. Although there were ribs to protect them, they were also extremely fragile. If they were hit, the qi and blood would be unstable, and the spiritual power and jinqi would be greatly reduced. As the saying goes, Tai Chi is tricky, and the 8 trigrams are thieves. The most poisonous one is Xingyi. Ziyuan cultivated the 8 trigrams palm. As soon as she used the originally extremely slippery kung fu, she immediately revealed an ethereal immortal qi. Her figure was erratic, and her hands attacked the vital parts of the mystical silver fox's waist and ribs from time to time. Her moves were exquisite, and her profound foundation and rich experience in fighting showed when she moved and jumped. Zhou Qin, on the other hand, was big and powerful. She had never learned any serious martial arts moves, but when her cultivation reached a certain level, all the magic and martial arts in the world were just a framework. At Zhou Qin's level, even a black tiger takes out the heart was enough to break any unique skill of any martial artist. This was the so-called 1 man can defeat 10 men. Zhou Qin's personality was strong and competitive, so she rushed to the front, punching and kicking, banging her head and biting her teeth. She almost did everything she could. Not only was there no order in the close combat, but there was also no prediction. Close combat was the best way to make up for the huge gap between cultivators. Zhou Qin had just finished the Zhuji phase, and she had defeated a young spirit master whose strength was far higher than hers by close combat. At this time she did the same thing and fought close to the front for a while. As the saying goes, one punch could kill an old master. For a moment, the mystical silver fox was a little busy. But when the mystical silver fox was about to kill Zhou Qin with her rich experience and powerful strength, Ziyuan would appear beside or behind her. Her hands would touch her ribs, or her palms would sinisterly slap her waist, so that she would have to be distracted to save her. At this time, Ziyuan and Zhou Qin, one was the main attacker and the other was the support. They complemented each other like two tight gears, and their cooperation was almost flawless. The mystical silver fox was held back by the two of them. It roared angrily again and again. It wanted to drive its foxtail to kill the two of them, but it was entangled by Su Chan. The other 5 foxtails were entangled by several other powerful magical weapons, so it could not be divided to deal with them. At this time, the mystical silver fox finally felt that something was wrong. She felt that she was sliding down a terrible abyss uncontrollably. Her body seemed to be getting heavier and heavier, and the glass mirror of heaven in the sky seemed to be rapidly absorbing her strength and spiritual qi. At this time, the Middle Sun cultivators saw that the mystical silver fox had been successfully stalled by Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Zhou Qin. They were overjoyed, and all of them exerted their remaining strength to attack frantically. Lu Yi was shocked, and he couldn't help but want to save the mystical silver fox. But at this time, Purin and the others were also in high spirits, and the sound of chanting Buddhist scriptures became louder and louder. For a moment, the name of Su Yi shook the sky. Lu Yi and Wang Jinyuan were almost defeated in the face of the last attack of the Middle Sun cultivation world, whose morale was greatly boosted. If it weren't for the fact that the real body of the 8-tailed earth fox was so powerful that almost no magic and powerful magical weapon could hurt him, and the defensive effect of Wang Jinyuan's Yellow River 9 Bends ruler was so good, the two of them would have been smashed into powder by these countless magic and powerful magical weapons. At this time, Li Jiandong, who was in the thundercloud, was activating the glass mirror of heaven with all his might, while nervously paying attention to the situation below. He had seen Su Chan, Ziyuan, and Zhou Qin repeatedly in danger, and he was so nervous that he wanted to jump into the field to help them. But soon, Li Jiandong was surprised to find that Su Chan had appeared behind the fox demon and blocked the two most threatening golden tails of the mystical silver fox. Ziyuan and Zhou Qin were like silk, and with perfect cooperation, they nailed the mystical silver fox to the same place. Li Jiandong was very calm. At this time, a figure had gradually appeared in the glass mirror of heaven in his hand. It was the appearance of the mystical silver fox. She was extremely beautiful, but there was a trace of difference from the coquettish mystical silver fox. Li Jiandong saw that the mirror image of the glass mirror of heaven had been preliminarily reflected. He immediately shouted at the mystical silver fox, but it was not the name of the mystical silver fox but another person's name. Chao Kefi. This loud shout, like a bolt from the blue, made the mystical silver fox tremble all over. She subconsciously looked up at the sky. There was a trace of confusion in her ferocious eyes, but Chao Kefi's remaining divine sense and memory were awakened by Li Jiandong at this moment. Chapter 870. Chao Kefi's body was occupied by the mystical silver fox. Although she was the reincarnation of the mystical silver fox, it could be said that she was a branch of the towering tree of the mystical silver fox. Although they were of the same origin, she had grown her own branches and leaves in the past 20 years. Therefore, although Chao Kefi only had one soul and 3 spirits, her memories were stored in her own life soul and divine sense. Although the mystical silver fox had occupied her body as a furnace, it had not completely digested her life soul. It had only integrated her life soul with its own heaven soul, but the memories stored in the life soul had not completely disappeared. Li Yundong's loud cry immediately awakened Chao Kefi's memory. In an instant, the life soul that originally belonged to Chao Kefi shook, and her memories surged up like a surging river and sea. She had once brushed past this fated young man in the elevator and chased after him because of her admiration for his handsome appearance. However, she did not expect that this was just the continuation of a 1,000-year ill-fated relationship. It was destined that there would be no result. Chao Kefi's confused eyes gradually became clear, and her blood-red eyes turned black. Her murderous and ferocious face gradually dissipated. She subconsciously raised her head and shouted in a low voice, "Li Yundong? Is that you?" As soon as she finished speaking, in an instant, the heaven soul of the mystical silver fox once again suppressed Chow Kefi's life soul. Her clear eyes suddenly burned again. The mystical silver fox didn't expect that her reincarnation would have such deep feelings for Li Yundong. She was so angry that she roared, "Wisdom King, you are despicable. How dare you use such a sinister and vicious method? Isn't it enough that you have deceived me for a lifetime? Do you think you can deceive me for a second life?" Li Yundong's yang spirit was high in the clouds. He also shouted angrily, "Mystical silver fox, I don't know what you gave birth to in your previous life, but I only know that in this life, Chow Kefi is my friend. I want to save her." The mystical silver fox couldn't help laughing angrily. "What nonsense are you talking about? I am her previous life and she is my present life. You want to save her? Save yourself first." As she spoke, she took a deep breath and couldn't help but raise her head and let out a long howl. This long roar suddenly shook the heavens and the earth. It was sharp and fierce, and the air seemed to be about to shatter. Visible ripples appeared in the surroundings. Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and Ziyuan suddenly felt as if their eardrums had been stabbed with a sharp knife. The three of them screamed at the same time and subconsciously covered their ears with their eyes closed, not daring to let go of the roar. You almost there. At this time from a distance, the thunderclouds in Suye's sky were constantly rolling because of the sharp howl, and they were slowly scattered. Countless visible air waves on the mountain range spread in all directions with the mystical silver fox as the center. Many cultivators in the cultivation world of the Middle Sun were shaken by this sharp roar and spat out a mouthful of blood. Some of them even spat out a mouthful of blood, but their internal organs had been shattered by the mystical silver fox. Even a master at Lu Ye's level couldn't help but frown. He covered his chest with his hand and gritted his teeth. Li Yundong had been sitting upright in the thunderclouds, and his figure was vaguely visible because of the thunderclouds. At this time, the mystical silver fox let out a sharp roar, and his figure suddenly appeared. The glass mirror of heaven in his hand was also trembling violently, and there was a cracking sound on the surface of the mirror. Li Yundong was shocked. He didn't expect that the mystical silver fox's roar would be so powerful that it could shatter the glass mirror of heaven in his hand from such a distance. However, he didn't expect that the mystical silver fox had sneaked into Mount Wutai to secretly learn the Vajra Buddhist Dharma. Mount Wutai was the holy land of Buddhism in China, and its status was similar to that of Mount Longhu of Taoism. There were a lot of scriptures here, and the mystical silver fox had secretly learned a lot of Buddhist unique skills. After that, she had eliminated those that were not very helpful to her in the constant fighting, and only kept a few methods that could fight against many enemies and were extremely lethal. One of them was the unique skill of Buddhism, lion's roar. According to the Buddhist scriptures, when the Buddha Lord was born, he pointed to the sky with one hand and the earth with the other. He roared like a lion and said, "I am the only one in the world." The Sutra of Vimalakirti and the Buddhist kingdom also said, "It's meaningless to perform the Dharma, like a lion's roar." What he said was like thunder. The lion's roar represented the Tathagata, which could destroy all obstacles and subdue all devils. It was almost there. The mystical silver fox was a fox demon. Originally she could not practice this kind of Buddhist magic. However, she had obtained the pure yang qi of Huife. Therefore, the Buddhist magic in the world was no longer difficult for her. Even the lion's roar, which was specially used to deal with demons, had been cultivated by her. It had become a trump card and a killing skill. Many times she had been besieged by people. At the critical moment of life and death, she had relied on this earth-shattering lion's roar to change the situation and turn defeat into victory. Because no one had expected that the lion's roar made by a fox demon would be so terrifying. Li Yundong's heart was shaken by the roar of the mystical silver fox. His qi and blood were rolling and he almost fell from the clouds. The spiritual mirror in his hand was creaking louder and louder, and there were cracks on the edge of the mirror, as if it was going to shatter in the next second. Li Yundong gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. A vast and powerful qi went straight through his dantian, and then it rushed to the canopy, rushed to the divine court, and went to the spiritual platform. Like a clear stream, it poured into Li Yundong's whole body. Li Yundong calmed down and thought about it. The yang spirit protected the sky-reaching glass mirror, but his divine sense returned to his body. He flicked the burning thumb pot with one hand and made a crisp sound. At the same time he said in a clear voice, "The Mahayana scriptures of Buddhism say that human immortals don't use the small multiplication method, earth immortals don't use the middle multiplication method, and immortals don't use the Mahayana method. In fact, the number of 3 multiplication is only 1. It's not difficult to seek the Tao with the Dharma. It's also very easy to seek the immortal with the Tao. For example, when the lion roars, all the insects are afraid, but the gods and Buddhas are unmoved. At this time he also mobilized his jinchi and chanted loudly. Although Li Yundong had never practiced the lion's roar, the so-called lion's roar originally referred to the voice of the Buddha. Li Yundong was the immovable wisdom king evolved from the angry consciousness of Buddha. His loud shout was the authentic lion's roar. Everyone felt that the lion's roar of the mystical silver fox was heart-stirring and touching. It shook them so much that they almost exploded. Their internal organs were in turmoil, and their divine senses were a little blurred, let alone resisting. As soon as Li Yundong's lion's roar came out, it immediately offset the lion's roar of the mystical silver fox. It was like a high mountain connecting the sky and the earth, blocking the roar and roar. At this time, everyone suddenly came to their senses. When they looked around, they were horrified to find that a large number of people had fallen to the ground. Many cultivators were kneeling on the ground and vomiting blood in pain. The ones who suffered the most were the cultivators from the various sects in the Japanese cultivation world. They cultivated their minds, not their lives, so there was no way they could withstand the devastation of the lion's roar. 7 out of 10 were knocked to the ground, and 2 out of the remaining 3 were shaken to the ground. The last 10% were top-notch experts like Ise Shinkuen and Ise Izumo. Even so, their faces were as white as paper. Li Yundong's lion's roar made the mystical silver fox's fatal attack fail. After the mystical silver fox let out a sharp roar, her spiritual power and jinchi were also greatly consumed. At this time the blue veins on her neck were bulging, and the blue veins on her forehead and ears were also jumping. It was a sign that her blood was rushing to the extreme. The mystical silver fox almost knocked everyone on the field to the ground, but in the end she failed. She looked at Li Yundong angrily and almost wanted to tear him to pieces. Although the lion's roar was powerful, it consumed a lot of spiritual power and jinchi. Even a top master like the mystical silver fox, whose spiritual power was endless, could not bear it. The mystical silver fox stopped in mid-air, panting violently. Su Chan, Ziyuan and Zhou Qin, who were next to her, were not much better. The little girl had been shaken back to her original form. At this time she was in so much pain that her body almost shrank into a ball. Ziyuan and Zhou Qin were also trembling in mid-air. Their hands and feet were numb and they could hardly move. Even the 2 masters of lightning retribution were like this, not to mention the others. Although the mystical silver fox showed fatigue and flaws at this time, no one on the field could seize this opportunity to give her a fatal blow. Li Yundong had used the lion's roar to resist the attack of the mystical silver fox, and he had also consumed a lot of spiritual power and jinchi. Especially at this time, his body was also numb from the shock and he couldn't move. He had to transfer his divine sense to the yang spirit again and control his yang spirit to continue pouring spiritual power and jinchi into the glass mirror of heaven. The glass mirror of heaven had been shaken by the mystical silver fox before, and the image that had been condensed had also dissipated. At this time, it condensed again and slowly reflected the figure of Chao Kefi. The mystical silver fox was shocked when she saw this. She wanted to go forward, but the chi in her body was too weak. She had consumed too much spiritual power, and the flames in her eyes had become much weaker. She was afraid that after she rushed over she would be injured by Li Yundong's other powerful magical weapons or magic, so she had to grit her teeth and endure it, desperately trying to recover her spiritual power and jinchi. At this moment, both sides had reached the last moment, as if 2 boxers who had been exhausted from fighting were accumulating their strength to give each other the last blow. At this time, the glass mirror of heaven in Li Yundong's hand slowly shone out a ray of colorful divine light again, hitting the body of the mystical silver fox from above. Li Yundong shouted, "Chao Kefi?" The mystical silver fox's whole body shook, but this time she was prepared. She didn't let Chao Kefi's life soul wake up again. She just gritted her teeth and sneered, "Reincarnated Wisdom King, do you want to take my soul like this? In your dreams?" As she spoke, she quickly pinched her fingers and prepared to fight against the soul-sucking power of this powerful magical weapon. At this time, although Ding Nan, who was watching from a distance, was also shocked to the point of numbness and couldn't move, she thought to herself, "If I call the name of the mystical silver fox again at this time, what will happen?" This idea emerged from the bottom of her heart, but she could no longer suppress it for a moment. Although the sneak attack had almost killed Ding Nan, she saw that Li Yundong and the mystical silver fox were fighting in the Tianwang mountain, and even Zhou Qin was extremely dazzling in the field, but she was watching from the sidelines. She was extremely unwilling. The strong jealousy and hatred made Ding Nan forget about life and death for a moment. Her fingers shrank slightly, and she once again grasped the Hell Wuzhang in her sleeve. Once again, a gloomy and cold power came from her fingertips. Ding Nan took a deep breath and shouted with all her strength, "Mystical Silver Fox." In an instant, the terrifying ghost in the Hell 5 feet enchanting spirit roared out again and pounced on the mystical silver fox with mystical luck. Chapter 871. Ding Nan's shout seemed to come without warning, which caught everyone off guard. At this moment, Hell Wuzhang showed its sinister viciousness to the fullest. When the mystical silver fox's power was at its peak, she would be paralyzed by this terrifying vengeful spirit for a while, not to mention that her power was greatly reduced now. At this time, everyone had no power to fight back. They watched helplessly as Li Jiandong and the mystical silver fox confronted each other. Only Ding Nan suddenly emerged and rushed out. In an instant, everyone widened their eyes and watched the evil spirit and vengeful spirit pounce on the mystical silver fox. They were so nervous that they couldn't breathe. Many people in the Chinese cultivation world hated and feared this powerful magical weapon. They only felt that this powerful magical weapon was sinister and vicious. But at this moment, they wished that this powerful magical weapon was as strong as possible. It would be best if it could kill the mystical silver fox in an instant. At this time, all the strength of the mystical silver fox was used to fight against the glass mirror of heaven. How could she have the strength to deal with the Hell Wuzhang? The mystical silver fox watched the black fog rushing toward her, but she was hit by the colorful divine light of the glass mirror of heaven. For a moment she couldn't move. A thought suddenly flashed through her mind and she couldn't help thinking, could it be that I, the mystical silver fox, have been dominating the world all my life, but I will die here today? No, I can't die here. Give me a little more time. The mystical silver fox was frantically adjusting her chi and blood in her body. She saw the ferocious faces of the evil ghosts and vengeful spirits in the black fog. In the blink of an eye, she could clearly see their gray eyes and terrifying bloody mouths. The mystical silver fox watched the Hell Wuzhang pounce on her. The chi and blood in her body were still a few seconds away from being adjusted. She could be inspired to fight back. However, Ding Nan seized these crucial seconds and almost gave the mystical silver fox a fatal blow. Seeing that the black fog was about to enter the body of the mystical silver fox, everyone was about to cheer. But at this moment, a figure appeared in front of the mystical silver fox like lightning. It was Lu Yi the eight-tailed fox. The mystical silver fox was all Lu Ye's hope. He had worked hard all his life to let the mystical silver fox realize his dream for him. Therefore he would rather die himself than see the mystical silver fox die. At this time, Lu Yi disregarded his own safety and stood in front of the enchanting vengeful spirit. At the same time his 8 huge cyan fox tails swept towards the sky, blocking the rainbow light of the sky-piercing glass mirror. The 7-colored divine light on the body of the mystical silver fox disappeared in an instant. She immediately broke free from the cage and dived into the deep sea like a flood dragon. Her chi and blood began to boil crazily again. Lu Yi was instantly pounced on by the ghost, and his whole body stiffened. His fox demon body was illuminated by the 7-colored divine light, and immediately his cyan skin made a sizzling sound. He screamed and his whole body trembled in pain. He curled up into a ball and fell from the sky. The mystical silver fox regained her ability to move again. In an instant she turned into a ray of cyan light and pounced on Ding Nan. This time she was determined to kill Ding Nan and cut off future troubles. But as soon as she moved, she saw that Li Yundong had once again activated the glass mirror of heaven and shone the colorful divine light on her body. She immediately stopped moving and slowed down a lot. It was this delay that gave Ding Nan time to react. She had been chased by the mystical silver fox before. The speed of the opponent was so fast that she didn't even have time to resist with talismans. As a result, there was no room or space for her other Taoist supreme magic treasure to be used at all. At this time, Ding Nan immediately took out the talisman in her hand and threw it forward. With a muffled sound, a yellow talisman was stuck in the air between the crowd, floating in the air. There was a golden ancient script on the talisman: "Escape." This was the talisman written by Gu Hong, the personal magic treasure of the Taoist alchemy tripod sect. Ding Nan took part in such a battle. Naturally, it was impossible for her not to make good use of this heritage that Zheng Yuan had snatched from the tiger's mouth. She had prepared a series of talismans and carried them with her long ago, waiting for the critical moment to use them. However, she underestimated the strength of the mystical silver fox. The speed of this great devil, who had dominated the cultivation world of the Middle Sun, was so fast that she didn't even have time to take out a talisman, let alone throw it out. The talismans written by the immortal pen were not only powerful, but also varied. Although only one word could be written on a talisman, if it was used skillfully, it would have unimaginable effects. As soon as Ding Nan threw out that escaped talisman, her figure immediately disappeared in the air, as if she had used the goddess Nyan seal. She disappeared everywhere. The mystical silver fox was stunned for a moment, but she immediately sneered and pinched her fingers together. The index finger and middle finger of her right hand were put together, making a sword finger. She pointed to her forehead and shouted, "Heavenly eye, open!" In an instant, a crack appeared on her forehead, and a horizontal eye appeared in it. This eye's gaze was sharp, and as it swept across the empty void, it immediately shot out a sharp green light, illuminating Ding Nan's figure. At this time Ding Nan was quickly fleeing to where Li Yundong was. At this time she also saw that staying with this group of cultivators from various sects in the cultivation world of the Middle Sun was completely unreliable. There was no sense of security at all. If Zhou Chang and Wang Yuanshan were still there, they might be able to save her life. But at this time, the only one who could save her was the man she loved and hated, Super Battler Li. The difference between her and Zhou Qin was that Zhou Qin was not afraid of death, but she was very afraid of death, because she knew that once she died in the battle here, how could she prove herself to Li Yundong in the future and trample on Zhou Qin? Zhou Qin was a sentimental person, and sentimental people often did not care about life and death, but only valued feelings. Ding Nan was an ambitious person. From the fact that she had always been by Zhou Qin's side and used her power to get what she needed, it could be seen that she had a personality. The more ambitious people in the world were, the more afraid they were of death because they were afraid that after they died, their plans and ambitions would not be realized. Therefore Ding Nan was very afraid of death. As long as there was a chance of survival, she would not easily say death. In the middle of the journey, Ding Nan was illuminated by the mystical silver fox. In an instant she felt a chill all over her body and a chill in her heart. A strong wind came straight from behind her. She was shocked and turned around abruptly, only to see the mystical silver fox pouncing on her fiercely. This shock only scared Ding Nan out of her wits. She immediately threw out all the talismans she had hidden. For a moment, dozens of talismans were pasted in front of her. On them were written thunder, lightning, wind, fire, stone, sword, and so on. The territory of Japan was small and narrow, so there were few powerful magical treasures. Whether it was Shintoism or Buddhism in the cultivation world, they all took a step back. If they couldn't play with powerful magical treasures, then they would play with talismans. This thing could be played even in the barren desert. It was most suitable for cultivators like them who had few resources. Therefore the cultivation sects in Japan were all experts in playing with talismans. In terms of talismans alone, they were not inferior to the Maoshan sect, the Chuanjin sect, the Jingyi school and other sections. But even so, they had never seen anyone who could throw out dozens of talismans in one breath. Although talismans were easier to make than powerful magical treasures, it took a lot of time, energy, magic power, and jinchi. When drawing talismans, not only did a large amount of magic power and jinchi need to be poured into it, but the precise runes and patterns on it could not have the slightest mistake. Otherwise it would cause the talismans to explode and the power backfire. The use of talismans was simple, convenient, and fast. Even cultivators with low cultivation quotients could use powerful talismans. Unlike powerful magical treasures, if the strength of cultivators was low, the power of powerful magical treasures would be relatively low. Sometimes, a well-used talisman could save a life or turn the tide of a battle. Therefore, a top-grade talisman drawn by a good cultivator could be sold at an astonishing price in the cultivation world. Japanese cultivators were proficient in playing with talismans. They had seen with their own eyes that any of the talismans Ding Nan had thrown out was of the highest quality and could even be sold for hundreds of millions of yen in Japan. At this time she had thrown out dozens of talismans in one breath, which really made their eyes pop out. Were all Chinese cultivators so rich? Not only did they have a lot of powerful magical treasures, but they also threw out talismans as if they were free? They threw them in bundles. The Japanese cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. They saw that the magic burst out of the talismans in the air was like a storm, as if dozens of cultivation masters were practicing magic at the same time. The explosion shook the sky and the earth. There were flames, falling stones, strong winds, flying swords, thunder, and lightning everywhere in the air. There were so many magic spells that it made people's eyes blur. If it had been any of them, they would have died at this time. There was no suspense. Even the faces of Ise Xingguang Se Chuyun and the others were as pale as paper. They looked at Ding Nan with their mouths agape. They could not imagine that this woman had so many amazing talismans hidden in her body. However, although these magic spells were powerful, they were useless against the mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox roared like a lion and forced Su Chan to return to her human form. Her fox tail retracted, and her body regained its freedom. At this time, her 7 foxtails once again covered her whole body tightly. She forcibly passed through the strong wind, one stone, sea of fire, sword rain, and thunder and lightning without any damage. Ding Nan panicked for a moment and threw out all the talismans. At this time she was almost bare-handed. She held the Hell Wuzhang enchantment sword tightly and wanted to shout, but she saw the mystical silver fox flicking her finger in the foxtail barrier. A golden thread popped out and pierced her chest like a flying needle. Ding Nan was in so much pain that her whole body turned cold. Not to mention the name of the mystical silver fox, she didn't even have the strength to shout. At this time, the mystical silver fox instantly pounced on her face and slapped the top of her head with her palm. She shouted, "Give me your life." Ding Nan looked at the overwhelming palm in horror. She couldn't help thinking, I didn't expect that my shout would kill me and break my soul. There was another chapter at about 10 o'clock. Chapter 872. Ding Nan saw that the palm was about to hit her head. Suddenly, a strong wind came from behind her. A few rays of green light flashed past her and went straight to the mystical silver fox. These rays of green light were the Chiwe and the 9th heaven Ziyuan silk. Ding Nan saw that the 2 powerful magical weapons were entangled with the mystical silver fox, causing her to pause and stop moving. She was stunned because she was very familiar with the Chiwe. It was the powerful magical weapon that Li Jiandong had passed on to Zhou Qin. At this time, Ding Nan's clothes were pulled by someone behind her, and she was immediately pulled back. A familiar voice came to her ears. "What are you waiting for? Why don't you go?" Ding Nan didn't even need to look back to know who this person was. She waited until her body was not far from Li Yundong's side before she struggled violently, gritted her teeth, and glared at Zhou Qin. You don't need to pretend to be a good person. Although Zhou Qin had a lot of grudges with Ding Nan, at this time in front of a powerful enemy, she had put aside her resentment. She had only done it out of sympathy and kindness. She couldn't bear to see Ding Nan, who was both her classmate and a cultivator of the same Tao, die here, so she helped her. However, she hadn't expected that Ding Nan would not appreciate it and instead speak ill of her. Zhou Qin couldn't help but be furious. She also glared back with her eyebrows raised. You don't appreciate it? Well, if you have the ability, go up and die. Ding Nan said angrily, how I die is my business, but you don't have to meddle in other people's business. Zhou Qin didn't expect that her kindness would provoke such words. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth and the blue veins on her forehead bulged. She just wanted to settle the grudges between them here and now. Su Chan, who was standing to one side, was so anxious that she stamped her feet and shouted, "What time is it? Are you still arguing about these things here?" Zhou Qin and Ding Nan glared at each other, snorted angrily and turned their heads. At this time, Ziyuan also saw that the mystical silver fox had broken through the barrier of the powerful magical weapon and pounced on them again. At this time, many cultivators in the cultivation world of the Middle Sun had also recovered their breath and attacked the mystical silver fox again. The mystical silver fox was hit by the colorful divine light of the glass mirror of heaven. For a moment, her strength was greatly reduced, but she was a little angry because of the entanglement of the crowd. Although her 7 foxtails could still protect her tightly and keep her unharmed, her momentum was greatly slowed down. Ziyuan turned her head and said quickly in a deep voice, "Ding Nan, do you have your immortal pen with you?" Ding Nan froze for a moment, then asked warily, "What are you doing?" Zhou Qin sneered and said, "Do you think we want to rob you?" Ziyuan quickly glanced at Zhou Qin, signaling her not to speak. Zhou Qin snorted in a low voice and turned her head away. Ziyuan said to Ding Nan seriously, "You use the immortal pen to cast a spell to sneak attack the mystical silver fox. We'll go and stall the mystical silver fox." As she spoke, she didn't wait for Ding Nan to agree. She winked at Zhou Qin and Su Chan, and the 3 of them rushed over again with a roar. Ding Nan saw that the 3 of them and the mystical silver fox were entangled in a ball again. At this time, Lu Yi and Wan Jinyuan were also nowhere to be seen. When the cultivation world of the Middle Sun saw that they were fighting in close combat, it was not good for them to use powerful magical weapons and magic. They all watched them helplessly. Ding Nan knew that it was a good time for her to show off her skills. She gritted her teeth and quickly took out the immortal pen from her sleeve. She mobilized her Jinqi and poured it into the immortal pen. she slowly wrote a word in the air, fix. She used the pen slowly and every stroke seemed to be sloppy. There seemed to be a mountain on her arm, which had the power of thousands of kilograms. As soon as she wrote the word fix, she immediately pointed at the mystical silver fox and shouted angrily, fix. This was a temporary body-fixing charm. The mystical silver fox only felt that her body was numb, and then the chi in her body seemed to freeze in an instant. This shock was not small, and the mystical silver fox was immediately shocked and angry. Although this could not cause a fatal blow to her, under the joint attack of Su Chan, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin, it was enough to make her unable to move. At this time, her figure was condensed in the glass mirror of heaven controlled by Li Jiandong. In her anxiety and anger she made the last crazy counterattack. A centipede died but did not fall down. Even a trapped beast would still fight, not to mention the crazy counterattack of the mystical silver fox. For a moment, Zi Yuan, Su Chan, Zhou Qin, and the others were unable to get close. Ding Nan knew that ordinary talisman magic did not have a good effect on the mystical silver fox, but this kind of body-fixing charm, which was not directly lethal, had some interference to her, so she wrote 3 body-fixing charms in a row. However, after writing these 3 body-fixing charms, she was so tired that she was sweating profusely as if she had collapsed. The most taboo for cultivators was to sweat a lot. At this time, the pores of the human body would open, and the primordial chi in the body would pour out uncontrollably, which was a sign of serious injury. Moreover, what did cultivators cultivate? In addition to the internal organs, it was the ability to control the opening and closing of the pores of the human body. The reason why cultivators could punch out with amazing power was that they could close the pores of their whole body, and then open the pores on their fists. They could gather their jinqi and spiritual energy on the fists, and then punch out with great force. The pressure was so great that ordinary people could not imagine. If a cultivator's pores were wide open, it meant that he had reached the stage of overdrawing. He could not control the opening and closing of the pores, and was no longer a leakless body. Although the immortal pen was powerful, every time it wrote a talisman, it would consume a lot of energy and jinqi. If it had been in the past, Ding Nan would have been exhausted before she could write a single talisman. Now she could barely write 3, which was already her limit. She was panting violently. When she wanted to write the 4th talisman, she couldn't even lift her arms. Her muscles were so sore that it seemed like they were about to explode. At this time, Ding Nan heard a gentle voice coming from beside her. Ding Nan, can you lend me the immortal pen? Ding Nan turned her face and saw that Li Yundong was looking at her with a smile. Although the situation on the field was critical, his eyes were still calm, and his expression was as calm as usual. Ding Nan looked at this handsome face, and for a moment, countless images flashed through her mind. The scenes in school, Mount Tianlong, the Taoist assembly, and Mount Longhu quickly flashed before her eyes. This boy was so familiar to her and he was so close to her, but at this time he seemed to be separated from her by a natural chasm and far away. This kind of feeling, as if it had been a lifetime ago, made Ding Nan stunned for a moment. She stared at Li Yundong blankly and did not respond. Li Yundong seemed to know what she was thinking and said gently, everything that happened in the past is just a fleeting cloud. Ding Nan, you are possessed. Li Yundong's voice contained the power of Buddha, as if Buddha was shouting at her. Ding Nan's whole body trembled. She looked at Li Yundong with a complicated look in her eyes and bit her lip. After hesitating for a long time, she handed the immortal pen in her hand to Li Yundong and said in a low voice, "This was snatched by Jing Yuan at the Taoist assembly. It should have been yours." Li Yundong chuckled and said, "Don't worry, I'm just borrowing it. I won't snatch your powerful magical weapon." As he said this, he turned around and quickly used the immortal pen to write talismans in front of him. Li Yundong's jinqi was much stronger than Ding Nan's. Although Ding Nan cultivated the combination of yin and yang qi between heaven and earth, her cultivation was still shallow and could not compare to Li Yundong's. Ding Nan's arms were heavy when she used the immortal pen, but Li Yundong was very familiar with it. Although the words he wrote were extremely ugly, he wrote one talisman after another without any gap in between. Ding Nan watched from the side and secretly admired him. She couldn't help but look at Li Yundong and think to herself, I can't imagine that the otaku on campus has become so powerful now. I don't know how he cultivated. Could it be that the reincarnated Wisdom King was born so powerful? But if he was born so powerful, why did he seem so incompetent before? Ding Nan was lost in her thoughts. Although her eyes were watching the battle, her thoughts had already flown far away. At this time, with the immortal pen in his hand, Li Yundong was like a tiger with wings. He controlled the burning thumb pot with one hand and the immortal pen with the other. His yang spirit was controlling the sky-reaching glass mirror. At the same time, the Bahuang sword and the Liuha sword were constantly attacking from both sides. His attack alone was really like a net. After Ding Nan came to her senses, she secretly adjusted her qi, closed all the pores in her body, and found the opportunity to use the sinister and vicious Hell Wuzhang soul hook on the mystical silver fox. This time, the powerful attack finally made the mystical silver fox unable to bear it. No matter how strong she was, she could not face so many powerful magical weapons and so many Jinshin and Thunder Retribution Masters by herself. In addition, there was a reincarnated Wisdom King next to her, whose strength was only a little lower than hers. The addition of Ding Nan was like a feather added to the overwhelmed mystical silver fox. The mystical silver fox finally collapsed. Under this rolling attack, the heart of the mystical silver fox became more and more heavy and cold. She felt that the colorful divine light shining on her body was getting hotter and hotter, and the qi and blood in her body were gradually out of control. Even some of the memories belonging to Chao Kefi would come up, and some scenes of the past would pass in front of her eyes inexplicably. The mystical silver fox was almost desperate. She thought to herself, if my soul is complete and I have the real body of a heavenly fox, how can I be defeated by you? Thinking of this, her heart suddenly moved and she couldn't help looking at Su Chan. Then she suddenly seemed to think of something. She turned her head and looked at the sky-reaching glass mirror and the purple-gold luo pan in the sky. At this time, Li Yundong, who was controlling the sky-reaching glass mirror, shouted, "Chao Kefi." At this time, the mystical silver fox was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Her whole body shook and she roared. A cloud of green mist suddenly rose from her body, but her soul was forcibly pulled out. The sky-reaching glass mirror had the power to project all the blood and soul of the opponent. However, if Li Yundong projected all the blood and soul of the mystical silver fox, it would definitely destroy Chao Kefi's body and soul consciousness. It was equivalent to Chao Kefi and the mystical silver fox perishing together. Therefore, he only planned to use the power of the sky-reaching glass mirror to project Chao Kefi's soul first, and then use the ability of the purple-gold luo pan to create a small world out of thin air to hide Chao Kefi's soul in it first. After he went back, he would find a way to revive Chao Kefi. At this time, there was indeed a wisp of white smoke in the soul of the mystical silver fox. It was separated from the cyan soul and flew towards the sky-reaching glass mirror. On the way, Li Yundong turned the mirror over and shone it at the purple-gold luo pan. Chao Kefi's divine sense and soul quickly flew towards the purple-gold luo pan along the colorful divine light. But at this moment, the yang spirit of the mystical silver fox immediately let out a sharp howl and rushed towards the purple-gold luo pan. Chapter 873. Seeing that Li Yundong had used the 4 magic treasures at the same time, and with the cooperation of Su Chan, Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, and Ding Nan, the cultivators of the Middle Sun sect finally separated the soul of the mystical silver fox. But they didn't expect that the mystical silver fox was indeed the most powerful demon fox in thousands of years. She was skilled and bold. At this moment, she showed unparalleled observation and decision-making ability. The mystical silver fox had never seen a magic treasure like the glass mirror of heaven. She didn't know that this magic treasure had the ability to penetrate time and space after being refined by Li Zhichang of the Taoist Chuanzhen sect and Ba Siba of the Sakya sect. However, when she saw that her 1 soul and 3 spirits were pulled out of her body, she made up her mind and threw her yang spirit and soul into the mirror. She was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she caught up with Chao Kefi's soul again. She wrapped her soul and rushed straight into the purple-gold luo pan along the colorful divine light of the glass mirror of heaven. It was also the first time that Li Yundong had used this magic treasure. He didn't expect that the mystical silver fox would be so bold. She decisively gave up her body as a tripod and was unwilling to give up her other soul and 3 spirits. She would rather fly into her magic treasure than let her soul be completely separated. At this moment, Li Yundong immediately faced a very serious question. Should he stop the glass mirror of heaven immediately, or should he let the mystical silver fox fly into the purple-gold luo pan with Chao Kefi's soul? If he stopped the glass mirror of heaven, all his previous efforts would be in vain. The mystical silver fox would definitely escape in a while. At that time, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven to find her again. Chao Kefi would be completely hopeless. However, if he didn't stop the glass mirror of heaven, the soul of the mystical silver fox would fly into the purple-gold luo disc, which meant that he had found a refuge with Chao Kefi's soul. If he wanted to find her again, he would have to enter the small spirit world in the purple-gold luo disc. At that time he really didn't know what would happen. Li Yundong only hesitated for a moment, and the soul of the mystical silver fox had already drilled into the purple gold luo pan like lightning. For a moment, the soul of the mystical silver fox disappeared, leaving only the colorful divine light of the sky-reaching glass mirror shining directly on the purple gold luo pan. The golden lines on the purple gold luo pan were constantly flowing with colorful light. This bright-colored light was like a sky full of multicolored light brought by the gods descending to the world. It was so bright that it could be clearly seen from dozens of kilometers away. It was magnificent and magnificent. You almost there. For a moment, everyone was stunned by the light all over the sky. It took them a long time to react. Where is the mystical silver fox? Is she dead? Everything that happened just now happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. Some of the weaker cultivators didn't even clearly see what happened. All they saw was a flash of white light and a flash of green light, followed by a colorful glow that filled the sky, illuminating the ground with a myriad of colors. It was as if the ground was covered with a colorful carpet. Only a few cultivators with high cultivation quotients were faintly visible. The mystical silver fox with mystical fortune seemed to have gone into the violet gold plate-like magic weapon that was constantly rotating. The Lingong sect had been in a great decline. Among the three great magic treasures of the sect, only the Bahuang and Liuhe sword was famous all over the world. Most of the other two magic treasures were not well known. Many people in the Chinese cultivation world did not know the origin of these two magic treasures, not to mention the cultivators of various sects in Japan. At this time I.C. Chuyun saw it clearly. She couldn't help but widen her eyes. She said to I.C. Xinguang beside her, the mystical silver fox. Has it been sealed? In the eyes of the Japanese, the soul of the mystical silver fox had been sucked into this magic weapon by Li Jiandong. The fact that Lord Battler could do this meant that he was confident in sealing this big demon. They were all scared by the mystical silver fox. They didn't expect to be able to completely destroy this terrible devil. As long as someone could seal her, it would be fine. As for when she would be released, they didn't think about it for the time being. The last time they sealed her, they had sealed her for 900 years. This time, even if the time was a little shorter, they would have to seal her for at least 100 or 80 years, right? As for what would happen after 100 or 80 years, they would have already ascended to heaven and become Buddhas. Who would care about it? Emperor Louis XV of France said, well, after I die, who cares about the flood? 900 years ago, what did our seniors do? If they had done their duty a little more, would the Japanese cultivation world have suffered such a disaster today and so many people have died? What the F***ck was that? S.E. Xinguang was also a little confused. He looked at the purple gold luo pan in front of Li Jiandong in bewilderment and felt that this powerful magic weapon was not a powerful sealing magic weapon, but he didn't dare to question it. Therefore he looked at Ai Chuyun helplessly and told her with his eyes, I don't understand either. Don't ask me. Although he had the style of a normal person, he wouldn't admit that he didn't understand such a thing in public. That would not be good. She hugged Chao Kefi and said in a low voice, Yundong, let's take President Chao's body back first. We'll think of a way when we get back. Li Jiandong glanced at her and nodded with a smile. Ziyuan sighed in her heart. Although this battle was not unprecedented, it was also a rare battle in the cultivation world in the past 100 years. The cultivation world of China and Japan had suffered heavy losses. In particular, this fierce battle had come to an abrupt end, which made people a little confused. Moreover, it had not been able to fully control the mystical silver fox. Although her soul had been separated from her body and her strength had been greatly damaged, she had taken Chao Kefi's body and hidden it in the purple gold luo pan, the powerful magical weapon. Ziyuan shook her head secretly. She turned her head and said Li Jiandong's words in fluent Japanese to the cultivators of all sects in the Japanese cultivation world. Suddenly, the top of the mountain in the Japanese cultivation world was in an uproar. There were cheers of survival everywhere and the sound of help was like a tsunami. At this time, on the other side of the mountain, the cultivators of all sects in China were also in disbelief. 1. The mystical silver fox was sealed just like that? Is it over? Are we still alive? Some of the cultivators who had survived the disaster looked around and saw that some of their fellow disciples and friends of the Tao, who were usually good friends, had fallen asleep in this foreign country. For a moment, they couldn't help but feel sad and happy, which was indescribable. At this time, many people in the Japanese cultivation world who were ecstatic were shocked by the fierceness of this battle. The Japanese cultivator who had shouted before shouted, Wisdom King, Please destroy this powerful magical weapon that seals the mystical silver fox with the secret of heaven together, so as to avoid future troubles. When Li Jiandong heard this, he was a little angry in his heart. Destroy the powerful magical weapon together? It's easy to say. It's not your powerful magical weapon. This is the powerful magical weapon of the Lingong sect. Moreover, if the powerful magical weapon is destroyed, what about Chao Kefi? Damn it, it's easy to talk. A bunch of bastards. Li Jiandong was unhappy. He lowered his voice and shouted, "Do I need you to interfere in my affairs?" These words were a little unreasonable, but at this time, Li Jiandong had subdued the mystical silver fox. The cultivators of all sects in Japan felt that there was nothing wrong with his words. They couldn't help but lower their heads and look like yes-men. The cultivator who had shouted before also looked terrified. He bent down and faced Li Jiandong, retreating into the crowd in fear and trepidation. Although they had been scolded by Li Jiandong, the cultivators of all sects in Japan could not hide their joy. Even the people of the Chinese cultivation sects were happy, but at this time, they seemed to have forgotten the other two initiators. At this time, at the foot of the Shuya mountain range, Lu Yi was looking up at the sky in despair. He could hardly believe his eyes. He had worked hard for more than 10 years, but it had turned into a bubble. Lu Yi stood motionless on the ground as if he had been petrified. A faint sigh came from beside him. Man proposes, God disposes. Leader Lu, you've miscalculated. Lu Yi didn't turn his head. He slowly moved his mouth and said in a dry voice, "If I can save the mystical silver fox once, I can save it a second time. Master Wan, you won't give up like this, will you?" Wan Jinyuan stood beside him, smiled slightly and said, "What are you talking about? I still want to make a comeback. However, before that, I want to borrow something from Leader Lu." Lu Yi asked in a low voice, "What?" As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Wan Jinyuan's gloomy voice say, "Let me borrow your head." Chapter 874. After saying that, Wan Jinyuan immediately stabbed Lu Ye's back with the Yellow River's 9 bends ruler. Lu Ye's body trembled as if he couldn't believe that Wan Jinyuan would betray him at this time. He turned his head abruptly and said, "Let's go, you almost there?" Wan Jinyuan sneered and said, "A wise man submits to circumstances, sect leader Lu. Don't tell me you haven't heard of this saying?" Lu Ye's chest was pierced by the Yellow River's 9 bends ruler. His whole body trembled violently. He wanted to angrily scold Wan Jinyuan for being despicable and insidious, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Wan Jinyuan looked at him with great pleasure and said with a ferocious face, "Sect leader Lu, didn't you predict everything? How about it? How many of today's events can you predict correctly? Humph, I've long had enough of you ordering me around and ordering me around. Today I'll let you know my prowess." Lu Yi trembled all over and finally couldn't help but roar, "Yuk." Before he could finish his words, the Yellow River's 9 bends ruler in Wan Jinyuan's hand twisted hard and scattered all of Lu Ye's chi. He snorted coldly and a sharp sword appeared in his hand like lightning. With a swoosh, a cold light swept across Lu Ye's neck. With a puff, Lu Ye's head flew into the sky, and the blood in his neck spurted 3 feet high, like a rain of blood. The Yellow River's 9 bends ruler in Wan Jinyuan's hand instantly absorbed all the yang spirit chi in Lu Ye's body. He was covered in blood, but he couldn't hide the proud smile on his face. At this time, Purin and the others also came forward to greet Li Yundong. After a big battle, Purin seemed to have aged more than 10 years and he was very tired. But although he was tired, his face was still full of smiles. He said to Li Yundong with joy, "Junren Li, although I didn't manage to get all the results in today's battle, I finally caught the soul of the mystical silver fox. I wonder if I can ask, how will Junren Li deal with the aftermath of this matter?" The mystical silver fox escaped into the purple gold luo pan like lightning. Li Yundong also felt that it was very tricky, but he didn't want others to know this. Otherwise, it would give others an excuse and reason to interfere in this matter. Once these people got their hands on her, they would definitely not care about Chao Kefi's safety. Compared with the casualties and losses that the mystical silver fox had brought to the world, Chao Kefi's life was nothing. Li Yundong could be impolite to the cultivators of the Japanese cultivation world, but he could not be impolite to the eminent monk who had helped him. He respectfully returned the salute and said, "Master Purin, don't worry. I will definitely find a way to stop the mystical silver fox from doing evil again." Li Yundong's words were very cunning. He did not say that he had to kill the mystical silver fox, nor did he say how he would deal with the aftermath of this matter. Although Purin was old, he was not confused. His heart was as clear as a mirror. He looked at Li Yundong meaningfully and smiled slightly. Although the mystical silver fox has been captured, the evil has not been eradicated. Jinren-Li, you won't forget this, will you? At this time, Li Yundong was suddenly shocked and blurted out, Lu Yi, did he run away again? As soon as Li Yundong finished speaking, he saw a man flying up from the ground. He was covered in blood and holding a head. He shouted in midair, the evil Lu Yi has been killed. Was Wang Jinyuan. Everyone took a closer look and saw that the head in Wang Jinyuan's hand was indeed Lu Yi. They were all shocked and burst into an uproar. Some vigilant cultivators shouted, Wang Jinyuan, what the hell do you want to do? Do you want to betray us at the last minute? However, Wang Jinyuan's face was full of righteousness. He said loudly, everyone listen to me. After I finish, if you want to kill me, I will not resist or stop you. As he spoke, he shouted at Li Yundong, Jinren-Li, you won't even let me say a word of rebuttal, will you? At this time, Li Yunyang sneered and said, Master Wan, your mouth is yours. Of course, it's your freedom to say whatever you want. This sentence was full of deep meaning and hidden sarcasm. The subtext was, the mouth is on you. No matter what you say, it's only your side of the story. But the ears are on us. Whether we listen or not, it's all on us. You almost there, and Wang Jinyuan was a cunning man, so how could he not understand? However, he pretended not to understand and said loudly, everyone, I believe that everyone has heard about Yen Feng of the Linggong sect of the Jingyi school lurking for 9 years in order to eradicate the Fox Zen school. But in reality, she's not the only one in hiding. There's also me. His words made the crowd hiss. Most of them didn't believe him. However, Wang Jinyuan was not discouraged. He said loudly, I know you don't believe me, but think about it. I, Wang Jinyuan, didn't enjoy the glory, splendor, wealth, and the ready-made way of Jin Dan. Why would I take the risk of doing something like this with Lu Yi? At that time, I saw that Lu Yi's plan was too big, but he was too strong. If I told him in advance, maybe he would think of another way. At that time, it would be even more difficult to guard against him. That's why I thought of pretending to be a snake and making a compromise, so that I could immediately do my best and capture all these demons and ghosts in one go. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. Everyone think about it. I am the master of external alchemy. Why should I take the risk and ruin my reputation today? My Gizao sect has been passed down for nearly 1,000 years, and it is one of the 3 mountains of Taoism. In terms of status, it is not lower than that of Mount Longhu Jingyi School. Why should I join in the evil, abandon myself, and be with an evil man? Am I born to be degenerate and obscene? As he spoke, he raised Lu Ye's head high and said loudly, now the evil culprit is here. If you don't believe me, just come up and make a move. I will never fight back. But before you make a move, please look at the evil culprit's eyes before you make a move. At this time, some people with sharp eyes looked at the eyes on Lu Ye's head, only to see Lu Yi glaring at them as if he had died with a grievance. Obviously, he was extremely angry. Suddenly, many people murmured in their hearts and whispered, could it be that Master Wan really compromised and was just putting on a show before? However, there were also people who knew what was going on and asked loudly, Master Wan, since you compromised, why didn't you help us at the most critical moment just now? Instead, you helped Lu Yi and the mystical silver fox? This was the most critical and core of all the problems. Wang Jinyuan was already prepared. He said with a pained expression, I have no choice but to fight against you. My heart hurts like a knife. But think about it, did I hurt any of you before? As for why I didn't help you, think about it. Lu Yi and the mystical silver fox, one is an 8-tailed earth fox, and the other is a 9-tailed celestial fox. If I expose myself and go against them, can I save one more person? If I don't expose myself in case my plan fails, I can still save as much of the fire of the cultivation sect as possible. My painstaking efforts can be proved by heaven. Wang Jinyuan's words were really flawless. If Li Yunyang hadn't known that Lu Yi had helped Wang Jinyuan find the Rinyuan Jin Dan and the Diyuan Jin Dan, he would have believed his words. However, many cultivators present did not know about this matter. At this time, hearing Wang Jinyuan's words, many people were seriously shaken. Especially when they saw Wang Jinyuan's righteous face, they believed him a little more. Although Su Chan was somewhat disgusted and dissatisfied with Lu Yi, they were of the same kind after all. Seeing that the former leader of the Fox Zen school had died so miserably, she couldn't help but close her eyes and turn her head, not daring to look again. Zhou Qin said in a low voice, Master, do you think this is true? Why do I feel that Wang Jinyuan is speculating? In my opinion, he betrayed us at the last minute. When he saw that things had failed, he killed Lu Yi to claim credit and clear his name. Li Yunyang stared at Wang Jinyuan and snorted coldly without saying anything. Zi Yuan, who was beside him, winked at Zhou Qin and said in a low voice, "Zhou Qin, don't make wild guesses." Zhou Qin wanted to say more, but she saw Zi Yuan glance at Purin. Only then did she understand and swallow her words. She could say these words without worrying about taking any responsibility, but Li Yunyang couldn't. He was now the leader of the Fox Zen school. Not only was his identity sensitive, but Wang Jinyuan was also the leader of the external alchemy in the Chinese cultivation world. He had a respected status, so anyone could easily blame him. At this time, Li Yunyang turned to Purin and said, "Master Purin, what do you think?" Purin smiled slightly, put his palms together and said, "Amitabha, when the false is true, the true is false, and when the true is false, the false is true. The true only exists in people's hearts, and the false only exists in lies and rumors. One day the truth will come to light." Li Yunyang suddenly smiled bitterly in his heart. Buddhist cultivators love to talk about Zen. Their words seemed to be full of profound meaning, but in fact they didn't say anything. They were extremely tactful and didn't want to offend anyone. He glanced around and saw that most of the Chinese cultivators had already believed Wang Jinyuan's words. Most importantly, he was now holding Lu Ye's head in his hand, which had already shut everyone's mouths. Moreover, his strength was not weak and he was the leader of the external alchemy with great financial resources. If they really went to cause trouble for him, the consequences would be a little serious. The Chinese cultivation world was now seriously injured. If they fought among themselves in front of these Japanese, it would be really shameful. Seeing this, Li Yunyang smiled slightly and said to Wang Jinyuan meaningfully, "Master Wan, you are so eloquent. I admire you." Wang Jinyuan didn't seem to understand his sarcasm. He also smiled slightly and said, "Jinrenli, you have a good method. I also admire you very much." The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Both of them laughed mischievously. Li Yunyang saw that Wang Jinyuan finally flew to the top of the mountain where the cultivators of the Chinese cultivation world were gathered. He saluted them one by one and showed them the weapons in his hand. He couldn't help thinking to himself, "Lu Yi, this old fox, has been hiding for 9 years and set up such a big trap. On that day he escaped by faking his death and used me as a tool. How could such a cunning and scheming person not expect that Wang Jinyuan would change sides? No way." Thinking of this, Li Yunyang's heart skipped a beat. His yang spirit quickly flew to the foot of the mountain. He followed the smell of blood all the way and found the place where Wang Jinyuan had killed Lu Yi. He found a large area of blood, but Lu Ye's headless body had disappeared. Li Yunyang couldn't help but be shocked. He thought to himself, "Where is Lu Ye's body? Could it be that I flew away?" Logically speaking, if Wang Jinyuan had really changed sides, it was impossible for him not to destroy Lu Ye's body and soul. But if Lu Yi was really on guard, it was impossible for him to not have a backup plan. However, looking at the situation in front of him, he really couldn't decide whether Lu Yi would live or die. Li Yunyang looked at the large pool of blood on the ground and couldn't help but become gloomy. "Lu Yi, this old fox, is he dead?" Chapter 875. Li Yundong checked the place for a long time, but he couldn't find any clues. Soon at this moment, an unprecedented and fierce battle finally came to an end. This fierce battle was marked by the appearance of the mystical silver fox. It officially began. In the process, the mystical silver fox arrogantly and conceitedly gave the Japanese cultivation world 2 chances. Finally, they waited for the Chinese cultivators to come to help twice. In the end, Li Yundong arrived in time with Su Chan, Zi Yuan, and Zhou Qin at the critical moment and successfully defeated the mystical silver fox. The fight was long and hard, but it ended abruptly like a fight between 2 exhausted boxers, which ended abruptly with the collapse of one of them. But it seemed to be over, but in fact it made people feel a little uneasy. Li Yundong was worried about Lu Ye's whereabouts. He felt that Lu Ye's life and death seemed to be uncertain, and his whereabouts were unknown. The cultivators of the various sects in China were worried about the whereabouts of the mystical silver fox. Although they all came up to greet Li Yundong politely, their eyes kept sweeping over the purple gold luo pan in Zi Yuan's hand. They wished they could snatch the powerful magical weapon and destroy it immediately. Li Yundong knew what they were thinking, but he pretended not to know. When someone mentioned it to him in a roundabout way, he also pretended to be deaf and dumb. When others saw him pretending to be stupid, they were worried in their hearts, but there was nothing they could do. First, it was because Li Yundong's strength had reached the peak of the Chinese cultivation world. Wang Yuanshan was dead, and Zhou Chang had ascended to immortality. At this time, the title of the best in the world would probably officially fall on Li Wudi's head. Secondly, Li Yundong had made great contributions in the battle to encircle and suppress the mystical silver fox. It could be said that without him, the mystical silver fox would sweep away all the cultivators without any suspense. The Japanese cultivation world was also well aware of this. They were extremely respectful to Li Yundong. At this time, no one doubted Li Yundong's identity as the reincarnated Wisdom King. Even the Tiantai sect, the Pure Land True sect, and the Xinyan Tantrism, who had many conflicts with Li Yundong, rushed over from the top of the mountain and saluted the reincarnated Wisdom King. At this time, Li Jiandong had no time to think about how to deal with the mystical silver fox hiding in the purple gold luo pan. He had to greet the cultivators who came to see him like a busy foreigner. Ziyuan acted as his interpreter, and the two of them were very busy. Soon Ding Nan looked at Li Yundong enviously. She had always been very vain and had always longed to be the focus of everyone's attention. Li Yundong didn't like to stay in the public eye, nor did he like to be pursued by everyone, but she was very yearning for it. She only hoped that if she were in Li Yundong's position, how good would that be? Ding Nan bit her lips gently, and there was no resentment in her heart. She thought that she had contributed a lot in this fierce battle, but no one had come up to affirm her achievements and contributions. What she had done had been covered up by Li Yundong. If this goes on, when will the world notice me? Ding Nan thought faintly in her heart, and her eyes fell on Li Yundong. Zhou Qin, who was standing to one side, saw that her eyes were full of unwillingness and resentment. She couldn't help but think of the friction and resentment between her and Ding Nan before. She thought that Ding Nan was thinking about the immortal pen that Li Yundong had not returned yet, so she secretly felt resentful in her heart. She said, "Why are you looking at my master like that? Are you afraid that he won't return your powerful magical weapon? Oh, by the way, even you know that this powerful magical weapon is not yours, so why are you still thinking about it?" Ding Nan's heart was already full of resentment. At this time, when she heard this, it was like adding oil to the fire. She immediately turned her head and glared at Zhou Qin. Zhou Qin didn't stand on ceremony. She sneered and said, "Don't worry. Although this powerful magical weapon is not yours, my master won't take advantage of you. If he says that he will return it to you, he will definitely return it to you." Ding Nan couldn't stand it anymore, so she immediately blurted out, "Am I worried? I don't think Li Yundong would do such a thing." With that, she turned around and left as if she couldn't bear to stay with Zhou Qin any longer. But after a few steps, she immediately regretted it. The immortal pen was not an ordinary powerful magical weapon. With such a powerful magical weapon, it was equivalent to having many more trump cards in the battle. Ding Nan couldn't help looking back at Li Yundong, only to see that her familiar classmate and the object of her love was smiling and greeting the cultivators of various sects in Japan, as if he was a foreigner. Among them, many people from the Chinese cultivation sects also came over to greet him. Du Fei of the Chuanjian Dragon sect, relying on his good relationship with Li Yundong, stepped forward and cupped his hands, saying with a smile, "Jinrenli has shown great power today. I Du Fei am really impressed. It's really lucky that the Chinese cultivation world has a great cultivator like Jinrenli." Li Yundong chuckled, turned around, took the burning thumb pot, and handed it to Du Fei with both hands. He said, "It's all thanks to Jinrendu's help. You lent me this powerful magical weapon, and with the help of all the cultivators who didn't care about life and death, we were able to win the battle. This is really not my own credit. Jinrendu, take back this burning thumb pot. I've been shameless enough to borrow it for many days, and it's time to return it to you." The burning thumb pot was a Buddhist magic weapon. Du Fei was holding it like an antique collection. He couldn't use it at all. There was no cultivator in the Dragon Gate sect of the Chuanjian sect who could use this magic weapon. When Du Fei saw that Li Yundong had pointed out this point, he felt very proud. He secretly admired Li Yundong for being so young and so powerful. His words were also so beautiful. He could be said to have taken care of everything. Du Fei was not only a cultivator, but also a shrewd businessman. How could he accept it at this time? He just laughed and said, "As the saying goes, a treasure sword is given to a hero." Although this burning thumb pot is not a treasure sword, it is also a famous powerful magical weapon of Buddhism. Since Jinrenli is the reincarnation of Wisdom King, it's a good match for you to hold this powerful magical weapon. Otherwise, if we Taoist cultivators hold this powerful magical weapon of Buddhism and stare at it helplessly, it would be a waste. At this time, he had generously given the burning thumb pot away in public. On the one hand, it confirmed the contribution and assistance of the Chuanjian Dragon Gate sect in this fierce battle. On the other hand, it made everyone sigh in admiration in their hearts. Jinrendu is so generous. This is the personal powerful magical weapon of Monk Fahai. He actually gave it away just like that. Good spirit, good means. Different people had different feelings when they saw the same thing. Some cultivators who coveted the burning thumb pot only felt that Du Fei was generous, while scheming cultivators like Wang Jinyuan felt that Du Fei was really good at seizing the opportunity. He had given away a powerful magical weapon that seemed powerful but was useless to them, but he had gotten a great bargain. He had not only established the credit of the Chuanjin Dragon Gate sect in this battle, but also made up for Li Yundong's life-saving grace. It was really a very cost-effective deal. He deserved to be called the most profitable cultivator in the cultivation world. However, in Ding Nan's eyes, she saw that Li Yundong was honest and trustworthy. He had explained the origin of the burning thumb pot in public and said that he would return it. Such a gentleman's behavior made her feel very relieved. She was no longer worried that Li Yundong would swallow her powerful magical weapon. After Ding Nan was relieved, she turned around and came to the disciples of Mount Wuhua, who were waiting for her on the mountain. At this time, Song Guohua and the others were waiting for her to return. When they saw her figure, they suddenly seemed to have a backbone. Although Ding Nan had been chased by the mystical silver fox several times before, no one among the cultivators of the various sects in the Middle Sun dared to look at her. Even many cultivators who had looked at them with contempt and disdain before did not dare to look at them at this time. Although the strength that Ding Nan had shown in this battle was not eye-catching, the potential that she had shown and the role that she had played in this battle were very important. It could even be said that she had become the last feather that had crushed the mystical silver fox with the luck of heaven. When Song Guohua and the others saw Ding Nan's return, all of them beamed with joy and complacency, and they even couldn't help but once again loudly shout the slogan they were used to shouting: Sect leader of 5-Point Sect, supernatural power surpasses the gods, I am the only one in the world. Usually Ding Nan didn't feel anything when she heard this slogan, but today when she heard it, she felt her face burning. She knew that the gap between her and Li Yundong was too big, not to mention Zhou Chang, Wang Yuanshan and the others. She really didn't have the face to listen to these words of, I'm the only one in the world. Ding Nan glared at Song Guohua and the others and shouted in a low voice, don't mention these words again. Song Guohua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, yes, I won't mention it now. In the future, when the leader's spiritual power is really divine, it won't be too late to mention it. Ding Nan snorted and glanced not far away. She saw Mao Yichang and the others looking at her strangely. She sneered to herself, then turned around and left arrogantly. Song Guohua followed closely behind her, as well as Alba and the others, who were already dumbfounded by what they saw. At this time, when Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping rushed to Su Yi, they only caught up with the end of the battle. They saw that Li Yundong had subdued the mystical silver fox and sealed it in the purple-gold luo disc. They couldn't help but look at each other. After Zhang Tianhe went forward to greet Li Yundong and congratulate him, he turned to Zhou Ping and said, Eldest Shiji, we have to go back quickly and tell the leader and auntie the news first. When Zhang Tianhe and Li Yundong greeted him, Li Yundong solemnly told him to go back quickly and restrain the disciples of the Jingyi school. Don't do anything offensive to Ao Wushuang. After he returned, he would go to the Jingyi school to explain the situation as soon as possible. After Zhang Tianhe agreed, he hurried back to Mount Longhu with Zhou Ping, regardless of how dusty the journey was. When they returned to Mount Longhu, Zhang Ling and the others of the Jingyi school had already received the news. After all, no matter how fast they flew these days, it was not as fast as the mobile phone message. They gathered at the gate of Mount Longhu to welcome Zhang Tianhe and the others. At this time, Zhang Lufang and the others had also heard the news that the mystical silver fox had been subdued. They cheered in the crowd like a noisy little sparrow. Her eyes were sharp and she saw Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping flying over from afar. She immediately pointed them out and said, Ah, senior brother Tianhe and senior sister are back. When the crowd saw them, they immediately cheered, especially the disciples who had been guarding the absolute love destroyer formation. They were all very glad. They didn't dare to imagine what would happen if the mystical silver fox won. If they implicated the Jingyi school, their sins would really be irredeemable. After Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping landed, they were welcomed by the people of the Jingyi school with the courtesy of heroes. Many people immediately surrounded them and asked about the situation of the fierce battle. Zhang Tianhe didn't care to enjoy such treatment, so he passed on Li Yundong's words to Zhang Ling. After hearing Zhang Tianhe's words, Zhang Ling knew that the reason why the mystical silver fox could be subdued was that Li Yundong had contributed a lot. His request at this time sounded reasonable, But how to deal with it was a big problem for the Jingyi school. If they listened to him, where would the face of the Jingyi school be? After all, it was a fact that Ao Wushuang had attacked the forbidden area and tried to destroy the magic formation. If they let her go like this, then all the cats and dogs would come to attack the Jingyi school in the future. But if they didn't listen to him, the Jingyi school would owe him such a big favor, but it would be unreasonable. They didn't know how the cultivators in Jianghu would gossip about them behind their backs. Zhang Ling was in a dilemma. After a little hesitation, she had an idea. She raised her head and said, "Gather all the disciples of the Jingyi school. I want to review this matter. I must find out the truth." Chapter 876. Zhang Ling's words stunned Zhou Ping. She said to Zhang Ling in a low voice, "Master, does this matter still need to be retried? Isn't it obvious at a glance? What can be the result of a retrial? What if Li Yundong is not satisfied?" Zhang Ling glanced at her and said in a deep voice, "How do you know if you don't interrogate him? Now that I think about it carefully, it is indeed a little strange. I heard from Tianhe that Ao Wushuang had been captured before she rushed into the stone cave, but why did the magic formation still collapse and destroy it? You'll be there soon. As the saying goes, times have changed. If Li Yundong hadn't defeated the mystical silver fox before, Zhang Ling wouldn't have cared whether she had wronged Ao Wushuang or not. But now things were different, so of course she couldn't blindly smooth things over. Zhang Ling looked at Zhang Tianhe worriedly. She was afraid that the investigation would eventually lead to him and bring him trouble. However, if she didn't investigate, she wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Zhang Tianhe saw Zhang Ling's gaze and knew that she was worried. He smiled and said, "Uncle Master, please find out the truth. If I'm really at fault and guilty, I won't shirk it, and I don't want anyone to shirk it for me." Zhang Ling nodded in her heart and praised him, but her face was expressionless. She turned around and said, "What are you waiting for? Let's go back to the Taoist master's mansion." At this time, everyone followed Zhang Ling and returned to the mountainside of the main peak. A Taoist priest on duty rang the bell, but it was the copper bell that would summon all the disciples when they were doing homework or had important things to announce. For a moment, the bell rang on the main peak of Mount Longhu. After a while, the disciples of the Jingyi sect from all the peaks arrived one after another. Zhang Ling asked some of the disciples to close the Taoist master's mansion outside, while she prepared to hold a meeting with many disciples in the inner hall to investigate the case. Zhang Ling sat under the statue of Zhang Tianshi with a dignified face. She glanced at the crowd coldly and asked a middle-aged man, "How is Ao Wushuang now?" The middle-aged man bowed and said, "She's still in custody." Zhang Ling asked, "Is she all right?" The middle-aged man said, "No, except for a bit of dementia, everything else is fine." Zhang Ling was silent for a while. She knew that Ao Wushuang must be looking forward to Wang Yuanshan's return, but Wang Yuanshan had already been crushed by the nine-heaven divine night thunder. If he could come back, not only would Ao Wushuang be happy, but she would also be happy. After all, although the Linggong sect and the Jingyi school had some conflicts because of some interests, they were of the same origin. If Wang Yuanshan was still alive, the strength of the Jingyi school would be greatly enhanced. After a moment of silence, Zhang Ling nodded her head and said to Zhang Tianhe, "Tianhe, tell everyone here about what happened that day." Zhang Tianhe responded. He was handsome, had an outstanding temperament and was quite eloquent. After bowing to the crowd, he quickly explained what had happened. For a time after everyone heard this, they all raised their heads and whispered to each other. The huge inner hall of the Celestial Master Mansion was full of discussions. Zhang Lufang was also in the crowd at this time. She couldn't help but be stunned and whispered, "Oh no, Shixiang Tianhe won't be punished for this, will he?" Li Sun was also a disciple of the Jingyi school, so he was also present. He looked around curiously. Although he had a certain foundation in Chinese, he couldn't understand everything. At this time he was still a little confused and asked in a low voice, "Shixiang, what happened?" Zhang Lufang was not in the mood to pay attention to him. She waved at him and said, "Don't quarrel. Listen to Shixiang Tianhe." After Zhang Tianhe finished speaking, Zhang Ling and the others saw that Zhang Tianhe was taking all the responsibility on his shoulders. The more they listened, the darker their faces became. Zhang Ling shook her head secretly and couldn't help but say, "Tianhe, think about it carefully. Apart from Ao Wushuang, who else entered the magic formation at that time?" Zhang Tianhe thought for a moment and suddenly thought of something. He couldn't help glancing at Zhang Lufang. At this time Zhang Lufang also seemed to have thought of something, and her heart suddenly shook. "Oh, it can't be that I'm also involved in this matter, right?" At this time her face was full of horror. Zhang Tianhe, who was in the field, saw it, but he quickly looked away and said in a clear voice, "There were no outsiders in or out." His answer was a little cunning. Zhang Lufang and Li Sen were both disciples of the Jingyi school, so they naturally could not be regarded as outsiders. Zhang Ling and the others were used to thinking that the internal disciples of the Jingyi school would not be crazy enough to destroy the magic formation. Even if they wanted to, they didn't have the ability to do so, so they didn't think too much about it. Zhang Ling thought to herself. Seeing that she couldn't get any more information, she said, "Tianhe, you guys come with me to the location of the magic formation to have a look." As she spoke, she walked out of the hall with several senior cultivators of the Jingyi school and headed for the side peak. The group of people arrived at the back of the side peak. At this time, half of the peak had collapsed, and the stone cave was almost buried. Zhang Ling frowned, turned around and shouted, "Dig up the stone cave. I want to see what's going on with the magic formation." Digging up such a large stone cave was no less than a huge project. It was common for ordinary people to dig for a few months. Soon. For a moment, many disciples of the Jingyi school stepped forward. Some used powerful magical weapons, some used the 5 ghosts moving skill, and some relied on their superior strength to move the boulders away one by one. Hundreds of cultivators worked together and quickly dug up the collapsed mountain. Zhang Ling and the others walked inside. Because they were afraid that the mountain would collapse again, many cultivators used their spiritual power and powerful magical weapons to maintain the mountain to prevent it from collapsing. Zhang Ling and the others walked into the excavated stone cave and saw that it was already a mess. This explosion was like an atomic bomb. How could they find any clues? Zhang Ling finally shook her head and sighed. What should we do? Why is this place like this? The elders of the Jingyi school also looked worried. Someone immediately said, "Eldest Shiji, why don't we punish them 50 times each?" Zhang Ling thought for a while and felt that there was no better way than this. It was impossible not to blame Ao Wushuang at all. The Jingyi school would lose face, so they could symbolically punish Zhang Tianhe. However, they could also give Li Yundong a place to rest. Zhang Ling nodded and walked out of the cave. She came to the field, took a deep breath and said, "The magic formation has been destroyed and we can't find any clues." As soon as she said this, everyone immediately raised their heads and whispered to each other. Zhang Lufang heard her Shixiang and Shimi whispering, "Hey Shixiang, who do you think destroyed this magic formation? Could it be Ao Wushuang?" Ao Wushuang? If she still has the Bahuang sword, it's possible. It's impossible for ordinary powerful magical weapons and ordinary cultivators to destroy this magic formation. Only the magic weapon of the present age can destroy it. When she came here, she was unarmed. How could she destroy the magic formation? Hey, that's strange. Who could it be? When Zhang Lufang heard this, she couldn't help but be stunned. She thought to herself, only the magic weapon of that time could destroy the magic formation? Her face suddenly changed and she finally thought of something. Her pretty face suddenly turned pale and her heart thumped. Oh my god, it was Big Blockhead who destroyed the magic formation. What should I do? It could be said that Zhang Lufang had been raised in the palm of people's hands since she was a child, and she had never encountered any emergencies. At this time, when she suddenly encountered such a thing, she didn't know how to hide it. All her thoughts were written on her face and Li Sen could see it clearly. Li Sen knew that it was not easy for a foreigner to seek the Tao and cultivate in a foreign country, so he often felt lonely. He followed his Shiji, the only person he was familiar with. Therefore, wherever he went, his eyes were fixed on Zhang Lufang. At this time, seeing Zhang Liufang's anxious look, he couldn't help but ask, "Shiji, what's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well?" Zhang Liufang's body trembled violently. She turned her face in fear, pulled Li Sen's hand and pulled him out of the crowd. She whispered in a trembling voice, "Big Blockhead, you're dead and I'm dead too." Li Sen had never seen Zhang Lufang so scared. He was shocked and became nervous. "What's wrong?" Zhang Lufang said in a trembling voice, "Idiot, do you remember that you fell in the stone cave before?" Li Sen thought she was talking about something serious, but when he heard it, he immediately smiled and said, "I didn't fall. I used the 7-star sword in time to support myself. Shixiang, don't worry, I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me." As he said this, he even jumped a few times to show that he was fine. Zhang Lufang saw that his voice was quite loud and attracted many people's attention. She was so angry that she wanted to kick him a few times. "Will it kill you to speak in a low voice? Shut up." Li Sen immediately shut his mouth tightly, looking nervous. He said softly, "Shixiang, I'm really fine." Zhang Lufang was so angry that she glared at him. "Fine my ass. You idiot. Don't you know that you've caused a huge disaster when you fell down in the mountain cave? When you used the 7-star sword to support yourself on the ground, you probably destroyed the magic formation. It's over, it's over. I shouldn't have brought you to this cave in the first place. Alas, I'm so meddlesome. Why did I cause such a disaster? Zhang Lufang blamed herself, and Li Sen's eyes widened. Magic formation? What magic formation? What is a magic formation? Zhang Lufang was tongue-tied. She wanted to explain to him, but she didn't know where to start. She sighed and said, "Anyway, you know that you're dead and I'm dead too. That's enough." Li Sun looked at her anxiously. Is it very serious? Zhang Lufang nodded hard and said word by word, very, very serious. Li Sun couldn't help but shout, "Oh my God, no way. I won't be fired, will I?" Zhang Lufang said with a sad face, "If only it were that simple." Li Sun looked at Zhang Lufang with a sad face and said, "Shiji, you have to save me." Zhang Lufang glanced at him. Although she hated him for falling for no reason and causing such a big disaster, she also knew that she couldn't escape from this matter. She knew that if something happened, she was afraid that she would be locked up for several years. That would be too miserable. Zhang Lufang couldn't bear such a hardship. She immediately grabbed Li Sen's hand and said, "If someone asks you later, just say that you don't know. Do you understand?" Li Sen nodded in fear and trepidation. Zhang Lufang was afraid that he didn't know the seriousness of the matter, so she said, "Keep your mouth shut. If the news leaks out, you'll be dead if I tell you." Li Sen nodded quickly, but at this time Zhang Ling said loudly in the field, "The matter has been investigated clearly. Everyone go back. I will take Tianhe and Ao Wushuang to go with Li Yundong. He must bear the consequences and responsibility for indulging his subordinates. Moreover, I think the destruction of this magic formation has something to do with Ao Wushuang. Although Li Yundong is powerful, he has a reason to go all over the world. I don't believe that he is an unreasonable person." Everyone nodded in agreement with Zhang Ling's words, but Li Sen was shocked. He subconsciously blurted out, "Huh? Eldest uncle is going to find Master Li's trouble?" In Li Sen's heart, he had a deep sense of identity and dependence on Li Yundong. After all, Li Yundong was the one who had touched his desire to cultivate. He was not a fool. He knew that Li Yundong had been implicated in this matter because he had concealed it. Zhang Lufang saw that he had spoken loudly and attracted everyone's attention. She was so angry that she stamped her foot on him. Li Sen was an honest person. Although he had been stamped, he still asked, "Shiji, this matter has nothing to do with Master Li?" Zhang Lufang almost cried. She didn't know what to say under the strange gazes of everyone. She could only lower her voice and say, "Do you want to be punished?" "Shut up." Li Sen was not an idiot. He knew that if he concealed it, the Shixiang who had lent him the sword would be in trouble, and Li Yundong would also be implicated. Although he was a foreigner and had been a little cautious in China these days, he had a strong sense of chivalry in his bones. He was bold, chivalrous, and straightforward. At the party at Tiannan University, he had challenged Li Yundong without considering the severity of the matter. After being defeated, he had immediately been convinced and wanted to be apprenticed to Li Yundong. A person like him would never allow others to be implicated for no reason, especially when Li Yundong was involved. At this moment, Li Sen's previous fear and uneasiness all disappeared. He said with a serious face, "Shiji, before I came to China, I learned a saying. This saying is, one person takes responsibility for what he has done. Although I haven't learned Chinese for long, I know the meaning and spirit of this sentence. Since this matter started because of me, then I should be the one to bear the responsibility. This is called one person takes responsibility for what he has done." After that, he tidied up his tight and somewhat ridiculous Taoist robe, held his head high and strode out. Chapter 877. Li Sun strode out of the crowd, leaving Zhang Lufang dumbfounded. She secretly stamped her feet and thought to herself, "Oh no, this blockhead is going out to die. What can I do?" She was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. While she was pacing around, Li Sun had already walked out of the crowd and said loudly in Chinese, which was not standard, "Great Master, I have something to say." Although many foreigners had joined the cultivation world in recent years, Li Sun was a rare foreign cultivator in the Jingyi school. His special identity made the whole sect treat him very differently. They were curious, and enthusiastic about him. Therefore, when Li Sun stood up to speak, Zhang Ling suddenly frowned. She didn't know why this foreigner suddenly came out at this critical moment. However, Li Sen's special identity made her quite polite. In this Dharma-ending era, how to expand the power and influence of one sect was the most important thing. After all, this was also the way to make a living. Although Zhang Ling secretly thought that Li Sen was a little reckless, she still said very politely, "Shou Yang, what do you have to say?" The disciples of the Jingyi school were generally ranked according to keep the way and be benevolent, Chuanjin and Taihe. Sincere declaration of scripture, loyal and upright performance of gold. Chonghan Tong Yuanyun, Gao Hongding de Luo. The three mountains are more prosperous, and the sea of fortune is surging. The sky is full of magic and the universe is full of immortals. These 50 generations were ranked in order. Zhang Lufang was the youngest in the generation of Du, and her Taoist name was Duyu. However, she felt that it was not a good name, so she never mentioned it. The senior brothers and sisters in the Taoist sect knew her habit, so they never called her by her Taoist name. They only called her by her name, so no one usually called her by her Taoist name. They just called her junior sister intimately or directly by her name. However, Li Sen had entered the sect very late, so he didn't even catch the last bus. He had to start from the first generation again and call his Taoist name Shou Yang. However, foreigners were more open. Li Sen was no longer a virgin a few years ago. When the disciples of the Jingyi school talked about this foreigner in private, they all teased him that his Taoist name Shou Yang did not live up to his name. Li Sen was a straightforward person. Other than Zhang Lufang and his own master, he did not pay much attention to other people's words and expressions. He did not know that he had always been the subject of ridicule in the sect. He walked straight to the center and said, "Great Uncle Master, light up." When Li Sen walked out, many people were still covering their mouths and laughing at him, pointing at the funny Taoist robe on his body. However, when they heard what he said, the crowd immediately went into an uproar. Zhang Ling's eyes widened and she couldn't help but ask, "What did you say?" When Li Sen saw that everyone was staring at him, he couldn't help but feel discouraged. Then he braced himself and said, "I broke this magic circle. I will take responsibility for what I did. Auntie, don't blame Master Li." Master Li Yundong. Zhang Ling was tongue-tied as she asked, "How did you destroy this formation? Where did you get the powerful magical weapon?" As she spoke, she suddenly glared at Zhang Lufang and asked, "Lufang, did you lend it to him?" Zhang Lufang was so scared that she was dumbfounded. Her pretty face was pale, and her lips trembled as she said in a trembling voice, "No. I didn't lend it to him." At this time, Zhang Qianhe said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Great Uncle Master, I lent it to Li." Senior Zhang Ling saw that the matter had been investigated, and in the end, it had come back to the Jingyi school and implicated Zhang Qianhe. She suddenly flew into a rage and glared at Zhang Qianhe with a look of exasperation. "You lent him the 7-star sword? This is the powerful magical weapon of our Jingyi school. How dare you borrow it? Are you crazy?" Zhang Qianhe had rarely seen Zhang Ling roar at him like this. For a moment he couldn't help but fall silent. Zhou Ping, who was standing to one side, was secretly anxious. She quickly winked at Zhang Qianhe, asking him to quickly clear his name and push all the blame onto the foreigner. Zhang Qianhe was silent for a while, then said, "This matter is my fault. It has nothing to do with Li Senator. He has just started cultivating and is very curious. When he saw the 7-star sword, I lent it to him to play with for a while." Zhang Ling was furious. "Play? This is one of the 5 great swords of Taoism. Is it for playing? How old are you? How can you still do such a thing? In the future, when the leader ascends to heaven, how can we rest assured that we will pass on the position of leader of the Jingyi school to you?" Zhang Qianhe lowered his head and said nothing, but his expression was surprisingly calm. Seeing that he was not speaking, Zhang Ling was even more angry. Zhou Ping was also so anxious that her heart was burning. She secretly stamped her feet and said, "Oh my good Shirdi, aren't you too honest? Why do you have to bear the responsibility for everything? What does this foreigner have to do with you?" Zhou Ping didn't care about Li Sen's life or death. In her opinion, the life and death of other people had nothing to do with her. As long as her good Shirdi was safe, that was all that mattered. When Zhou Ping saw that Zhang Qianhe was like an iron general standing next to his mouth, not saying a word to defend himself and looking like he was about to be beaten, she couldn't help but stand up for him. However, she was also very particular about the way she spoke. Her gaze fell on Li Sen and she asked sternly, "Jinren Shou Yang, how did you destroy the magic circle?" Most foreigners were straightforward people. How could Li Sen know that there were so many twists and turns in the story? Seeing that this beautiful senior sister was asking him, he spilled the beans and told her everything that happened. However, he was careful not to drag Zhang Lufang into it. He only said that he was curious and wanted to take a look here. When everyone heard that Li Sen had fallen and that the absolute love-extinguishing array, which had been secretly planned by the Jingyi school for 10 years, had fallen short of success, they couldn't help but look at each other and sigh secretly. Zhang Ling's face turned green and red as she listened. She glared at Li Sen fiercely, wishing she could eat him in one bite. After a while, Zhang Ling's chest heaved violently a few times. She gritted her teeth and said, "Shou Yang, although this was an unintentional mistake, the crime is too great. The hard work of our Jingyi school over the past 10 years has all gone down the drain, and Wang Yuanshan has also died in vain. Do you know that you are wrong?" Li Sen lowered his head and knelt on the ground with a thud. He said in a low voice, "I know I was wrong. Please punish me, Shiji." Zhang Ling gritted her teeth and looked at him, saying one word at a time, "Your crime cannot be redeemed, but considering that you have just entered the cultivation world and are a foreigner, I am now temporarily acting as the head of the sect and will expel you from the sect." Li Sen was shocked. He suddenly raised his head, his face full of fear and shock. He cried out involuntarily, "No?" He had gotten used to staying in Mount Longhu these days. When he suddenly heard that he had been expelled from the sect, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Zhang Liufang's eyes also widened in an instant. Finally she couldn't help but cry out involuntarily, "No, this is my fault. It has nothing to do with Blockhead." She lost control of her emotions and even called out Li Sen's nickname for a moment. Zhang Tianhe was also shocked and said, "Eldest aunt, this is too serious. In the future, how can there be foreign cultivators who will convert to our Jingyi school?" Zhang Ling said angrily, "T, all of you shut up. Do you know how much manpower and material resources our Jingyi school has spent for this absolute love-extinguishing formation? Now the magic formation has been destroyed for no reason, and Wang Yuanshan's death has been worthless. Now all the cultivators in the world are thinking about Li Yundong. Who will remember how much our Jingyi school has paid for this? Tell me, if you were me, what would you do?" Zhang Ling was nicknamed the Lady of the Earthly Fire. When she was angry, her eyebrows were almost standing on end, and her power was extremely terrifying. For a moment, no one dared to plead for Li Senior. In the cultivation world, expulsion was the most severe punishment, because which other sects would dare to casually accept an expelled disciple of the Jingyi school? This was tantamount to cutting off this person's path of cultivation and the idea of becoming an immortal. Therefore, in their opinion, there was no more severe punishment than this. Even if he was locked up for 10 years, in the end he would only be delayed in cultivation by 10 years. Moreover, during these 10 years he would not be completely locked up in a small house. He would just not be allowed to set foot in the secular world. It was just that he could concentrate on cultivation, which was not necessarily a disaster. But now, Li Sun was about to be expelled from the sect. For a moment, everyone was secretly afraid that Zhang Ling's anger would burn them. Moreover, they also knew that Zhang Ling wanted to protect Zhang Tianhe and avoid implicating Zhang Lufang, so the punishment for Li Sun was particularly severe. After Zhang Ling shouted, she said angrily to Zhang Lufang and Zhang Tianhe, "Don't you two even think about running away. I'll ask the sect leader later and let him punish you." Zhang Tianshi was a gentle person who did not get angry easily. Even when he saw the absolute love-extinguishing formation being destroyed with his own eyes, he just sighed. If he was asked to deal with this matter, he would probably raise the board high and then let it fall gently. After Zhang Ling dealt with the matter here, she waved her sleeve and shouted, "It's settled. Zhang Lufang, Zhang Tianhe, come with me to see the sect leader. The rest of you can go back by yourselves." Zhang Tianhe glanced at Li Sen, sighed softly, shook his head, and turned to follow Zhang Ling. Zhang Lufang looked at Li Sen with tears in her eyes. She could not move her feet and her heart was full of guilt. Zhang Ling turned her head and shouted at her, "Zhang Lufang, why are you still standing there? Do you want to be expelled as well?" Zhang Lufang was so scared that her whole body trembled. She didn't dare to look at Li Sun again. She lowered her head and wiped her tears as she followed Zhang Ling. As she walked, she secretly looked back, only to see Li Sun standing in the crowd, not knowing what to do. At this time, although there were many Taoist priests of the Jingyi school who sympathized with Li Sun, they did not dare to anger Zhang Ling for Li Sun's sake. They were afraid that the fire would also burn their heads, so they all kept a distance from Li Sun and pointed at him from afar. Li Sun was in a daze and stayed where he was for a long time. After a while he came to his senses. When he woke up he found that he seemed to be sleepwalking. He didn't know when he had reached the foot of Mount Longhu. He stood alone in the mountains and looked up. He saw the blue sky was majestic, but he didn't know where the end of the world was. He looked around and saw the winding paths in the deep mountains and old forests. He didn't know where he was. The more Li Xin thought about it, the more frightened and confused he became. He remembered that he, Chris, and Alba had gone to China to seek the Tao. In the end, the three of them had gone their separate ways. He didn't know whether the two of them were alive or dead. It was not easy for him to start cultivating, but he had encountered this disaster. The ups and downs along the way were really indescribable. Although he was a man, he couldn't help but cry at this time. He cried alone for a while, then slowly recovered and thought, if you don't want me, I'll go to my master. In Li Xin's heart, although Li Yundong was not his master and disciple, he had always regarded Li Yundong as his master. Although he was not loyal, he was quite devout. Although Li Xin was careless, he also knew that he had made such a big mistake. If he went to Li Yundong to seek refuge, would he cause trouble for him? Would he cause him to despise him? Although he had been seeking the Tao with great tenacity along the way, he also had a very high self-esteem. At this time, he had been expelled from the sect, and his self-esteem was unprecedentedly high. He was afraid that others would look down on him and that he would bring trouble to others. For a moment, Li Sun was at a loss at the foot of the mountain and didn't know where to go. Just when he was at a loss, he suddenly heard a voice coming from beside him. Amateus, fellow Taoist, we meet again. When Li Sun heard the voice, he was stunned. He turned around and saw a middle-aged man in a black Taoist robe standing in front of him. The man had a short beard and looked capable. He was the great cultivator of the Shantian sect, the overseas branch of the Jingyi school Yin Kong, whom Li Sun had met once at the side of Mount Longhu. Chapter 878. When Li Sun suddenly saw Yin Kong, he couldn't help but be stunned. He stammered, "It's you? What are you doing here?" Although he had been expelled by Zhang Ling, he still had a good impression of the Jingyi school in his heart. He had also seen this person who had once been an enemy of the Jingyi school, so he immediately became hostile. Seeing Li Sun's expression, Yin Kong couldn't help but laugh and say, "Amateus, all the Taoist friends in the world are one family. Mount Longhu is the ancestral court of our Jingyi school. Although we are now opening a branch overseas, we are not outsiders. Why can't we come here?" Yin Kong's words were reasonable, and then he said, "However, as far as I know, Jinren Shouyang, you don't regard yourself as an outsider, but it seems that someone does." Li Sun's expression suddenly became gloomy and he lowered his head in silence. Yin Kong smiled and said, "The Jingyi school is not doing well now. The head doesn't care about worldly affairs and Zhang Ling is headstrong. She doesn't know how to cherish a talent like Jinren Shouyang. In order to protect her own disciple, she expelled you. It's really unreasonable, hateful, and annoying." Li Sun was careless, but he didn't think about how Yin Kong knew these things. He just said in a low voice, "The problem is indeed my fault. They can't be blamed." Yin Kong clapped his hands and sighed. "Jinren Shouyang is really kind. I admire him. However, I'd like to ask Jinren Shouyang, now that they have expelled you, where are you going now?" Li Sun said blankly, I don't know." Seeing Li Sun's expression, Yin Kong didn't beat around the bush. He simply went straight to the point, laughed, and said, "To tell you the truth, before the head of the Shantian sect asked me to come to Mount Longhu, he had predicted that I would meet a great cultivator here, so he asked me to stay here. Sure enough, I've been waiting for him today. Jinren Li, since there is no one here, there will be a place for you. Our Shantian sect will open the door to you at any time." It was impossible for Li Sun not to understand such straightforward words, but he didn't expect that as soon as he was expelled from the Jingyi school, he would be immediately invited by the Shantian sect. For a moment he was at a loss and didn't know what to do. Should he go to Li Yundong or follow Yin Kong to join the Shantian sect? For a moment, Li Sun hesitated and looked around blankly. At this moment, Zhang Ling led Zhang Tianhe and Zhang Lufang all the way to the back of the main peak of Mount Longhu. After arriving at the Immortal Afterglow cave, she turned around and said to the two of them, "Wait here. I'll go in and talk to the sect leader." The Immortal Dawn Cavern was located halfway up the main peak. It was surrounded by mountain ranges and lush trees. Below the cavern, clear water flowed like satin. It was the most spiritual place in Mount Longhu. Only the sect master had the qualifications to cultivate in this place. After Zhang Ling entered the Immortal Cloud Cave, she came to an empty stone cave. She bowed slightly and said to the empty stone cave, "Sect leader, I have something to see you about." After a while, a voice came out of nowhere from the stone cave. It was gentle and had a hint of vicissitudes. "Zhang Ling, I already know why you are here. I feel that this matter of yours is a little inappropriate." Zhang Tianxi's magic power was great and his magical powers were vast. At this time he was cultivating in a closed secret room in the stone cave. He was speaking through the thick stone wall in the secret room, but his voice could pass through as usual. His cultivation of magic power was evident. When Zhang Ling heard Zhang Tianxi's words, she suddenly raised her head in surprise. What's inappropriate? Zhang Tianxi said lightly, you expelled Shou Yang from the sect, but it has benefited the Xintian sect. Zhang Ling was shocked. Ah, Xintian sect? Where did you get that from? Zhang Tianxi's voice came leisurely, echoing in the stone cave. Yin Kong of the Xintian sect has been staying nearby. I was wondering about his intentions. Now it seems that he has come for Shou Yang. What a good plan. Zhang Tianxi said calmly, but Zhang Ling was furious. The Xintian sect has been trying to steal the position of our Jingyi school. Now they are trying to steal our people? Celestial Master Zhang said lightly, we were the ones who drove them out and they just took them in. Zhang Ling was stunned when she heard this, and then she said angrily, I don't believe that a dull foreigner who can't even walk can achieve great things in the future. Zhang Tianxi was silent for a while and said, Shiji people's fate is unpredictable. No one can judge a person's future fate and fortune. Isn't this obvious in Li Yundong? What's more, even if Shou Yang doesn't achieve anything in the future, this is a gesture of respect for the wise. It's really hurtful for us. Zhang Ling was silent for a while, and her heart had slowly calmed down. She felt a little regretful. She gritted her teeth, stamped her feet and said, then I'll go after him now. However, Zhang Tianxi immediately said, that's even more inappropriate. Since you have said it, you should not go back on your words. If you change your mind, how will your disciples look at you? Zhang Ling raised her head and sighed. This won't do, that won't do. What should I do? While she was sighing, she heard Zhang Lufang shouting outside the cave, eldest aunt, it's not convenient for you to go. I'll go find Li Mung. Shou Yang come back. Zhang Ling furrowed her brows and subconsciously wanted to reprimand this unruly girl. However, a thought flashed through her mind and she endured it. After all, it was indeed not appropriate for her to go. It would be best if Zhang Lufang could go and persuade Li Sr. But after a while Zhang Lufang came back alone. As soon as she saw Zhang Ling she burst into tears and said, he's gone. I don't know where he went. Although Zhang Ling regretted it in her heart, she refused to admit it in front of the juniors. She shouted stubbornly, what are you crying for? It's improper in front of the leader. Is our Jingyi school going to overturn the sky because of Li Sen? Zhang Tianxi, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly sighed and said, Shiji. In the future the leader of our Jingyi school must be Li Sen. Zhang Ling was shocked. What? Leader, are you serious? Is this the secret of heaven? Since you knew that he was so important, why didn't you stop me in the beginning? Zhang Tianxi asked in response, can I change heaven's destiny if I stop you? Then what's the point of me stopping Wang Yuanshan from being with Ao Wushuang? Zhang Ling was suddenly speechless. Zhang Tianxi sighed and said, heaven's destiny is like a ball. If you stop it, it will bypass your obstruction, continue to move forward and eventually reach its destination. Zhang Ling was silent for a while and said in a low voice, Leader, what should we do now? Zhang Tianxi pondered for a while and said, Zhang Tianhe. Zhang Tianhe had been looking down at the side, like a stone man in meditation. At this time, when he heard Zhang Tianxi call his name, he responded and walked in from outside. He bowed respectfully and said, Leader, I've done something wrong. Please punish me. Although Zhang Tianhe was the son of Celestial Master Zhang, there wasn't the slightest hint of filial piety in the tone of Celestial Master Zhang and Zhang Tianhe at this moment. It was as though they were purely master and disciple. Zhang Tianxi said slowly, you're incompetent, impulsive and frivolous. I punish you to seclusion in the side peak for 5 years. Are you convinced? Zhang Ling opened her mouth and blurted out, Leader, isn't that too harsh? 5 years? How many 5 years can a person live for? Zhang Tianxi said lightly, it's too early to say whether it's a blessing or a curse for me to put him in confinement for 5 years. Hearing this, Zhang Ling immediately shut her mouth, while Zhang Tianhe bowed deeply and said, I have no objection. Zhang Tianxi said again, Zhang Lufang. Zhang Lufang, who was crying, wiped away her tears and choked with sobs. Leader, are you going to confine me as well? Can you give me a few years less? Although Zhang Ling had a straight face, her words almost made her laugh out of anger. She thought to herself, how did Zhang Kongyun teach his disciple? How could he teach such a lawless disciple? How could he talk to the leader like this? Did he think it was a vegetable market? Bargaining? There was a slight smile in Zhang Tianxi's voice. He said, although you have good intentions, your good intentions have caused trouble. I want to punish you, but after all, you are not my disciple. Go to your master Zhang Kongyun and let him punish you. Zhang Ling was stunned. She knew that everyone knew how much Zhang Kongyun doted on Zhang Lufang. If Zhang Kongyun punished her, she would be locked up for a few days at most. She couldn't help but want to say, "Leader, isn't this punishment too light?" But when the words were about to come out of her mouth, she swallowed them back. She thought to herself, since the leader has made such an arrangement, he must have his reasons. It's not good for me to say more. Zhang Lufang hadn't expected that Zhang Tianxi would punish her so lightly, and she couldn't come to her senses for a while. Seeing her in a daze, Zhang Ling couldn't help but shout, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and thank the leader for his kindness." Zhang Lufang quickly thanked him. "Thank you for your magnanimity. Lufang won't dare to do it again. But my Sherdij." She raised her head and looked pitifully in the direction of Zhang Tianxi's voice. She wanted him to go to the Xintian sect and ask for Li Xin back. But before she could finish her words, Zhang Ling had already guessed what she was going to say. She immediately shouted, "Zhang Lufang, what do you want to say? You're like a clay bodhisattva crossing the river. You can't even protect yourself, and you still want to meddle in other people's business? How could the sect leader do such a thing?" Zhang Lufang lowered her head, looking sad and silent. At this time Zhang Tianxi said in a gentle voice, "Well, get up. The guests are coming. Don't let them see you like this. Don't lose face for our Jingyi school." Zhang Ling asked curiously, "Guests? Where are the guests from?" Zhang Tianxi chuckled softly and didn't say anything. After a while, a loud voice came from the foot of the mountain. Li Yundong, the leader of the Fox Zen school, with his disciples Su Chan, Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan, the acting leader of the Linggong sect, have come to pay a visit to the leader of the Jingyi school, Jinren Zhang Tianxi. Li Yundong's words were long and lingering, clearly reaching the ears of Zhang Ling, Zhang Lufang and Zhang Tianhe. The three of them suddenly widened their eyes. Zhang Lufang was even more surprised and said, "Ah? Is Li Wudi here?" Chapter 879. When Zhang Ling heard the news of Li Yundong's visit, she was stunned and blurted out, "He came so fast." As she said this, she turned her head to look in the direction of Zhang Tianxi and said nervously, "Leader, do you want to see him?" Zhang Tianxi was silent for a while and said lightly, "He didn't come here to see me but to see Ao Wushuang. Seeing me is just a superficial statement. And now the time is not right. When the time is right, I will naturally meet him." Zhang Ling knew that Li Yundong was no longer the greenhorn he used to be. She was far inferior to him in terms of status and cultivation. What's more, Li Yundong had come with a great victory. She was very afraid that she would be suppressed by him and lose the face of the Jingyi school. However, seeing that her Shirdi was unwilling to go out to meet him, she had no choice but to say, "Then I'll go down the mountain to meet him." Zhang Tianxi said, "Tianhe Lufang, you all have some fate with Jinren Li. Go down the mountain to meet him together." Zhang Tianhe and Zhang Lufang looked at each other, nodded in agreement, and followed Zhang Ling out of the immortal cloud cave. The last time Li Yundong had come to Mount Longhu with Su Chan in a low-key manner to see Zhang Tianxi, he had been unceremoniously turned away and almost fought with Zhang Kongyun. This time he had come in a high-profile manner with Su Chan, Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin. It was really four masters of lightning retribution appearing at the same time. It could be said that one king and three immortals had appeared. The power of this lineup was enough to scare people to death. Zhang Ling of the Jingyi school did not dare to be negligent. In order to compete with Li Yundong and the others in terms of lineup, she had mobilized almost all the forces of the Jingyi school. Even Zhang Kongyun, who was in closed-door cultivation, was alarmed. Except for Zhang Tianxi, almost all the people of the Jingyi school had come out. At the foot of the mountain, Li Yundong heard a crisp ringing sound coming from the top of the mountain. Looking around, he saw a few figures flashing around the bend of the mountain road at the foot of the mountain. It was Zhang Tianhe and Zhang Lufang. Zhang Lufang had just experienced a great change, and her excitement had become a little depressed. She looked at Li Yundong curiously and saw that although the famous Li Wudi had come with the power of defeating the mystical silver fox, there was no complacency on his face. On the contrary, he was more approachable than usual. There was a faint smile on his face, which made people involuntarily feel like getting close to him. Her sad mood because of Li Sen's departure seemed to be much better. Zhang Lufang couldn't help but ask, "Li Wudi, have you reached the highest level of Golden Immortal?" Among them, golden immortals referred to great immortals of the same realm and status as Buddha in Buddhism. During the reign of Emperor Xianzong of the Tang dynasty, there was a Taoist priest named Shi Jianwu who wrote a book. In his book, Zhonglu's collected works of Taoism, he divided the immortals into 5 types: ghost immortals, human immortals, earth immortals, celestial immortals and celestial immortals. The origin of celestial immortals referred to the highest realm of Taoism's 6 realms and 36 layers of heaven, the 6th realm, the heavenly overarching heaven. Therefore, heavenly immortals were also known as great heavenly immortals or great heavenly golden immortals. After a cultivator transcended the thunder tribulation, the heavenly thunder was no longer a threat to him. It was difficult for the heavens to subdue such a person, so they could only acknowledge the cultivator's identity as an immortal. However, immortals were also divided into different grades. Ghost immortals referred to cultivators who had cultivated to the point where their bodies were destroyed and their corpses were dismembered and ascended. Their yang spirit did not disappear, and they could exist in the world of ghosts for a long time. The representative figure was King Yama. The representative figure of human immortals in the secular world was Ji Gong, who was talked about by the world. The representative figures of earth immortals were the famous 8 immortals, such as Lu Dongbin, Han Zhongli, Zhang Guolao, and so on. Immortals mostly referred to famous immortals such as Tai Bai Jingxing and Erlang Shen. Celestial immortals, also known as Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals, were the highest cultivation of immortals. At most, they could cultivate to the point where their body and spirit were wonderful, and they were not bound by life and death. They could concentrate and disperse freely, and no one in the world could defeat them. In the heaven realm, the most famous celestial immortals and Zenith Heaven Golden Immortals were the Yu Huang of the Haotian Palace. Ever since the Great War of the Gods in the Shang and Zhou dynasties, the heaven realm had not allowed golden immortals to descend to the mortal world. Even immortals were not allowed to easily set foot in the mortal world. Therefore, there were no living golden immortals in the mortal world. Although Zhang Liufang's question didn't sound like a big problem, after careful consideration, it was a little inappropriate. The subtext seemed to be saying, "Li Yundong, your cultivation is already so high, when are you going to ascend?" Such a question was a very taboo for a cultivator, especially a great cultivator, because in other words, it was actually asking, "When are you going to die?" Zhang Qianhe heard the rudeness in Zhang Liufang's words and immediately glared at her. "Lufang, I'm so rude. Quickly apologized to Jinren Li." Li Yundong and Zhang Lufang had played a lot of tricks. He knew that she was a straightforward girl, almost without the slightest bit of scheming, even worse than Su Chan. He knew that Zhang Lufang did not mean what she said, so he didn't care and said with a smile, "It's not that serious." As he said this, he said to Zhang Lufang with a smile, "Golden immortals are far behind, and I can't be called invincible. There is one person in the world who can be called invincible." Zhang Lufang first made a face at Zhang Tianhe and said in a low voice, "Super Li is not as petty as you." As she said this, she asked Li Yundong curiously, "Then who is invincible?" Li Yundong smiled and said, "The mystical silver fox." Zhang Lufang did not witness the earth-shattering battle of sealing demons with her own eyes, so she naturally did not know the terror of the mystical silver fox. She only heard from Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping that Li Yundong and the others had sealed the mystical silver fox, so she thought that Li Yundong had become even more powerful than the mystical silver fox. But in fact, Zhang Tianhe and Zhou Ping had only seen the end of the battle, but they had not seen the dangers and hardships before. Therefore, when they came back, they only told them about the process of Li Yundong sealing the mystical silver fox. When Zhang Lufang heard Li Yundong say that the mystical silver fox was invincible in the world, she couldn't help laughing. "Ah, you are so cunning. You said that the mystical silver fox is invincible in the world, but you, Super Li, defeated the invincible in the world. Isn't that the invincible in the world?" Li Yundong saw that she was naive, so he said with a smile, "What are you talking about? I didn't defeat the mystical silver fox alone. Su Chan, Ziyuan, Zhou Qin, and the cultivators of all sects in the Middle Sun cultivation world have contributed a lot. Without them, I wouldn't have been able to defeat the mystical silver fox alone." When Zhang Tianhe saw that Li Yundong was still so humble after such a great victory, he secretly admired him in his heart. He couldn't help but regard him as the goal and benchmark that he wanted to catch up with in the future. At this time he said respectfully, "Jinren Li, let's not talk nonsense. Please come up the mountain with us. Our fellow disciples of the Jingyi school have been waiting for a long time." The purpose of Li Yundong's high-profile visit this time was to let the Jingyi school understand his current strength and status, so that they would not dare to do anything to Ao Wushuang, so as to avoid any tragedy. This time, when he saw that the two people from the Jingyi school who had come out to meet him were Zhang Tianhe and Zhang Lufang, who were quite friendly to him, he knew that the Jingyi school wanted to make friends with him and no longer regarded him as an enemy. Li Yundong made up his mind. He turned his head and nodded to Su Chan with a smile, indicating for her to calm down. When Su Chan saw Li Yundong looking at her, she smiled sweetly. The last time she came to Mount Longhu with Li Yundong, she had been beaten and killed. This time, she was treated as a distinguished guest and was respectfully welcomed up the mountain. Her face was full of glory. If it weren't for the fact that she was worried about her master and there were outsiders present at this time, she would have hugged Li Yundong's arm and kissed him hard. Li Yundong nodded to Ziyuan and Zhou Qin again. The group of people walked up the mountain path. At this time, the Jingyi school had already sealed the mountain, and there were no tourists on the mountain. Halfway up the mountain, they saw a stone archway at the gate of the mountain halfway up the mountain. It was the gate of the Jingyi school. The plaque of the gate was arched and majestic. Many disciples of the Jingyi school stood on both sides, and in the middle stood Zhang Ling, Zhang Kongyun, and other cultivators of the older generation of the Jingyi school. Li Yundong saw that the Jingyi school had mobilized a large number of people to receive them at the gate of the mountain. It was no longer the situation where no one paid any attention to them after they went up the mountain. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The Jingyi school was the leader of the Chinese Taoist cultivation world. Their actions showed that the largest cultivation sect of Chinese Taoism had officially recognized their strength and status. They believed that they had the qualifications to be on an equal footing with Zhang Tianshi. But who was Zhang Tianshi? He was known as the celestial master in the Song dynasty, the master of heaven. He did not bow to the emperor and was in charge of the talismans of the three mountains. Even today in the age of chaos, he was a big shot who could directly listen to the heavens. He had walked step by step from an otaku to such a point. Looking back, it was really like a dream. Zhang Ling also looked at Li Yundong with a complicated look in her eyes. Although she was still a little unwilling in her heart at this time, the situation was stronger than people. Li Yundong had suddenly risen. At this time he had become so strong that even if they didn't want to admit it, they had to admit it. Zhang Ling calmed down, stepped forward and saluted, saying, Zhang Ling of the Jingyi school is temporarily the leader of the sect. Greetings to you, leader Li. Li Yundong also stepped forward and saluted, saying, I don't dare. Greetings to all the seniors. Many seniors of the Jingyi school were afraid that Li Yundong would be aggressive with the power of a great victory. At this time, seeing him so humble, they all nodded in their hearts and couldn't help but have a higher evaluation of Li Yundong. Zhang Ling also breathed a sigh of relief. She seemed to have forgotten the dirty things that had happened between her and Li Yundong before. She smiled and exchanged greetings with Li Yundong. Li Yundong also acted as if the previous unpleasantness had never happened. He just smiled and talked to her. After the two of them exchanged pleasantries for a while, Li Yundong finally got to the point. Zhenren Zhang, my disciple Ao Wushuang has offended the forbidden area of your sect. I already know about this. This time I came to apologize to you. I wonder where Ao Wushuang is now. Zhang Ling thought to herself, she's here. She tilted her head slightly and looked at a disciple of the Jingyi school who was in charge of punishment. This disciple was one of the guards of the absolute love extinguishing formation. At this time he whispered to Zhang Ling, she is still locked in the sword cage. Zhang Ling was slightly angry. She glared at him and said in a low voice, let her out immediately. Hurry up, go and invite Ao Wushuang here. The disciple immediately turned around and left, but after a while he came back with a sad face and said nervously in a low voice, Auntie, something happened. Zhang Ling was a person who cared a lot about face. Her heart skipped a beat and then she became furious. She couldn't help but raise her voice. What happened? Chapter 880. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, the disciple said to Zhang Ling with a pained expression, she refuses to move and we can't do anything about it. Zhang Ling was shocked and angry. She thought to herself, what is this fox spirit doing? Does she know that the leader of the Fox Zen sect has come at this time and is deliberately putting on airs to embarrass our Jingyi school? The more Zhang Ling thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case. She couldn't help but feel angry in her heart, but she managed to hold it in. After glaring at the disciple, she suppressed her anger, turned her face, smiled at Li Yundong and said, Leader Li, the disciples of your sect are unwilling to come. It seems that we have to wait for you to go. We can't invite you. Li Yundong had also heard what Zhang Ling had said to the previous disciple of the Jingyi school. He remained silent, smiled faintly and said, "Then please take me to the Lady of the Earthly Fire. I think there must be some misunderstanding." Seeing that Li Yundong was not going to investigate this matter, Zhang Ling was a little relieved and took the opportunity to explain things clearly. She said, "Leader Li, our Jingyi school has just investigated this matter. The destruction of the absolute love extinguishing formation has nothing to do with Ao Wushuang, but this matter was caused by a combination of factors. It was caused by our own people, so I won't go into detail with you here. However, it is a fact that Ao Wushuang broke into the forbidden area of our Jingyi school. Although Ao Wushuang is a fox spirit, she is infatuated and touching. Moreover, Leader Li has helped our Jingyi school many times, so we hope that we can turn hostility into friendship. We also hope that Leader Li will restrain your subordinates in the future and that such a thing will not happen again in the future." Breaking into the forbidden area was a very serious matter for any sect. If they were to be held accountable, the consequences would be very serious. However, the meaning of Zhang Ling's words was very obvious. The Jingyi school did not want to argue with Li Yundong about this matter. They hoped that the matter would be resolved. Li Yundong saw that the other party had extended an olive branch to him, and his attitude was quite humble. Although he had a lot of friction with the Jingyi school before, at this time he had already seen through life and death. Looking back at the past, he immediately smiled. Li Yundong said with a smile, "The Lady of the Earthly Fire is too serious. When I see Ao Wushuang, I will definitely persuade her to apologize to your sect. In the future I will restrain them more." Zhang Ling hadn't expected Li Yundong's cultivation to be so high, yet he was so modest. He was like a different person from the sharp Li Yundong in her previous impression. She couldn't help but be surprised. She seriously looked at this overly young great cultivator in front of her. In her impression, even her younger brothers, Zhang Tianshi and Wang Yuanshan, did not have such cultivation in such a realm when they were at Li Yundong's age. Throughout the 2,000 years of Chinese history, there were very few Taoist cultivators who could cultivate to such a realm at the age of 20. When Wang Chongyang cultivated and achieved the Tao, he was already 66 years old. When Zhang Sanfeng met Fiery Dragon Jinren, he was already 77 years old. When Zhang Daoling traveled to seek the Tao, he was already 58 years old. When Immortal Qin Tuan, the founder of China's Tai Chi culture and Zhang Sanfeng's grandmaster, achieved the Tao, he was already 12 years old. Among the Buddhist cultivators, there were many who had reached such a realm at such a young age. However, the only one who had such magical power and was well versed in both Buddhism and Taoism was Ba Si Ba Mei, who was the most talented cultivator in the world. Zhang Ling sighed inwardly. No matter how prejudiced she was, she couldn't help but be impressed by Li Yundong's bearing at this time. She said with some doubt and hesitation, "Master Li, there's something I don't know if I should say." Li Yundong smiled and cupped his hands. "The Lady of the Earthly Fire is very knowledgeable. You must be very knowledgeable. If you have anything to say, just say it. I'm all ears." Hearing this, Zhang Ling thought more highly of Li Yundong. She said cautiously, "Master Li, with your current cultivation realm, you should be writing books and establishing your own sect. Why do you want to stick to the Fox Zen sect?" Zhang Ling was very impressed by Li Yundong's bearing and character at this time, so her words were quite tactful, completely different from the anger she used to have. Hearing this, Li Yundong didn't comment. He just smiled and said, "The Lady of the Earthly Fire has a point. I'll go back and think about it." Zhang Ling glanced at him and sighed in her heart. If such a great cultivator is bound to the Fox Zen sect for the rest of his life, it will be a great loss to our cultivation world. The fox demon is very charming and has done a lot of harm to people. Thinking of this, she glanced at Su Chan, who was standing to one side. She saw that her eyebrows were picturesque, her figure was romantic, and there was an indescribable charm between her eyebrows. She looked at Li Yundong with infatuation. Her charming and infatuated appearance was really lovable. Standing together with Ziyuan and Zhou Qin, many disciples of the Jingyi school were still sneaking glances at her. She was so disgusted by the fox demon that she couldn't help but praise, "I feel sorry for her, let alone an old servant." Zhang Ling sighed in her heart. Wang Yuanshan had been harmed by Ao Wushuang. She hoped that Li Yundong would not be harmed in the future. Zhang Ling said to Li Yundong, "Master Li, please come with me. I'll take you to see Ao Wushuang." Li Yundong nodded with a smile. He turned around and said hello to Su Chan and the others, then followed Zhang Ling. They walked down the main peak and came to the side peak. From afar, Zhang Ling saw several disciples of the Jingyi school standing there at a loss. When they saw her they looked terrified. Zhang Ling was slightly shocked and quickly took 2 steps forward. What's wrong? Where's Ao Wushuang? One of the disciples said with a bitter face. She ran away. Zhang Ling was shocked. What? How did she run away? Didn't you say that she refused to move just now? The disciple was speechless. Another disciple beside him said in a low voice, we saw that Ao Wushuang refused to move. She just said that she would wait for Wang Yuanshan to come before she would leave. So we were afraid that she would delay things, so we told her that Shibo Wang Yuanshan had passed away. Zhang Ling was so angry that she almost jumped up. She looked at these disciples with disappointment and said, and then? The previous disciple said in a low voice, then, she didn't believe it and ran away. Zhang Ling felt that her temples were beating rapidly. She had lost faith in the face of the Jingyi school. She didn't know how to explain it to Li Yundong. The smile on Li Yundong's face darkened slightly. He frowned and was about to speak when Ziyuan, who was next to him, gently tugged at his sleeve, winked at him, and looked at the top of the side peak. At this time, Su Chan suddenly blurted out, I know where Master has gone. As she said this, she rushed up the mountain. Zhang Ling couldn't even shout. As soon as she opened her mouth, she saw Li Yundong, Ziyuan, and the others also flying up the mountain in a flash. She smiled bitterly and sighed. After glaring at these disciples, she waved her hand and followed them with many disciples of the Jingyi school. After Li Yundong and the others flew to the top of the mountain, they saw Ao Wushuang standing alone on the edge of the cliff beside a huge wind-dust stone. Her eyes were infatuated with the end of the world, and she was motionless. When Su Chan saw Ao Wushuang, she immediately rushed over and shouted in surprise, Master. But when she rushed to the front of Ao Wushuang, she suddenly stopped and looked at her in surprise. Su Chan widened her eyes and looked at Ao Wushuang in front of her, only to see that she looked haggard. She didn't look as cold and strong as she used to. Although her eyes were still firm, her hair was covered with frost, which was obviously caused by the cold weather. For a cultivator like her, this was simply inconceivable. Only when she was careless and couldn't control the qi and blood in her body could such a result be caused. Li Yundong frowned secretly and wanted to go forward to see the situation, but he was gently pulled back by Ziyuan. Li Yundong looked back and saw Ziyuan shaking her head at him. She said in a low voice, don't go. Now only the people closest to Ao Wushuang can talk to her. If we go there will be problems. Su Chan saw that Ao Wushuang was like a walking corpse, and her whole body was lifeless. She was shocked and afraid. She wanted to reach out to pull her, but when she reached out in the air she couldn't help but freeze. She was afraid that she would disturb her and cause trouble. Su Chan said in a trembling voice, Master, what's wrong with you, Master? When Ao Wushuang heard this familiar voice, her eyes, which were staring into the distance, moved slightly, but there was still no vitality in them. She said in an empty voice, Who are you? Su Chan had never seen her like this before. She couldn't help but burst into tears. It's me, Chaner, your favorite disciple. Master, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me. Chaner? Only then did Ao Wushuang's eyes have a trace of vitality. She slowly turned her head, and her empty eyes gradually focused on Su Chan. Ao Wushuang smiled slowly and reached out to touch Su Chan's cheek. Chaner, are you here? Have you come back from Japan? Tell Master. Wang Yuanshan is not dead, right? How could Su Chan say whether it was right or wrong? She burst into tears and threw herself into Ao Wushuang's arms, sobbing. Master, don't scare me. I can't live without you. Seeing her like this, the expression on Ao Wushuang's face became softer and softer. While stroking Su Chan's long black hair, she looked up at Li Jiandong in the distance and said, You already have someone who loves you. Why do you need me? Su Chan was so scared that she forgot to cry. She suddenly raised her head and looked at Ao Wushuang with tears in her eyes. Master, what do you mean? Ao Wushuang smiled slightly and gently wiped the tears from her face. You've grown up. You'll get used to living without me. Su Chan became even more terrified and shouted, No, no. Ao Wushuang said softly, I'm going to wait here for Wang Yuanshan to come back. Are you going to wait here with me? Don't you want to live a good life with your lover? Su Chan hugged Ao Wushuang tightly and buried her head in her arms. She shouted, Then I'll wait with you. Ao Wushuang smiled gently. Last time I waited for him for 10 years before he appeared. This time I don't know how long it will take. Are you going to wait with me? Don't be silly. Su Chan cried, Master, I'll wait with you. I'll wait with you all the time. Ao Wushuang sighed softly and looked up at Li Jiandong. She said slowly, I'll entrust her to you. You have to treat her well. As she said this, she shook her arms and suddenly threw Su Chan out. Li Jiandong was quick to react and caught Su Chan. At this time Su Chan was shocked and scared. She was so frightened that her qi and blood were in chaos. There was no Dharma power or Jinqi left. Seeing Ao Wushuang's behavior, she was so scared that her hands and feet went soft and she couldn't stand up for a while. Li Jiandong held the little girl in his arms and sighed softly. Senior Ao Wushuang, what if Wang Yuanshan can't come back? Ao Wushuang smiled and said in a daze, someone told me the same thing 10 years ago, but in the end I still waited for him to come back. Li Jiandong felt sad when he heard this, so he said, I mean, what if it takes a long time for him to come back? 10 years, 20 years? 100 years? Or even 1,000 years? Although he didn't make it clear, he was actually telling Ao Wushuang that Wang Yuanshan was dead and that he couldn't come back. But Ao Wushuang didn't seem to understand. She looked into the distance and said in a low voice, then I'll wait for him for 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. Last time I waited for him. This time I can do it too. After that, she looked at Su Chan lovingly for the last time, then turned her head and pinched her fingers. A talisman slowly floated out of her sleeve and then burned into ashes in mid-air. In an instant Ao Wushuang's body crackled, and the stones and soil under her feet rose up, burying her in it. She turned into a big stone, and only the shape of a person could be vaguely recognized. This change shocked everyone on the mountain and rendered them speechless. They looked at the infatuated and stubborn Ao Wushuang, who had sealed herself and petrified in order to wait for Wang Yuanshan. She had turned into a big stone and waited for him here. Many cultivators of the Jingyi school, who had a strong hostility to Ao Wushuang's fox spirit body, were shocked by her infatuation. They stared blankly at the big stone and were all speechless. For a moment, the side peak of Mount Longhu was silent. Only Su Chan's heart-wrenching cries lingered in the mountain stream and did not dissipate for a long time. Chapter 881. The scene of Ao Wushuang resolutely turning into a stone shocked everyone on the side peak of Mount Longhu. Some female disciples of the Jingyi school couldn't help but turn their heads and wipe their tears. Zhang Lufang was young and didn't know much about love, but when she saw Ao Wushuang turn into a big stone, she couldn't help but cry. Almost there Zhang Kongyun had always hated Ao Wushuang. He thought that she had bewitched Wang Yuanshan and harmed him. But at this time, seeing that Ao Wushuang had almost turned herself into a stone for love, even though he was stubborn, he couldn't help but sigh at this time. What an infatuated fox spirit. Su Chan couldn't take the blow and fainted in Li Yundong's arms. Li Yundong hugged Su Chan lovingly. His chest was wet from crying. He sighed softly, not knowing what to say. Zhang Ling hadn't expected that Ao Wushuang would be so infatuated. She turned her head and looked at Li Yundong helplessly, saying, Leader Li Thisk. Li Yundong waved his hand with a heavy heart and said, Things have come to this. There's no need to say anything else. I hope that your sect will treat our Fox Zen school's predecessor, Ao Wushuang. I will be deeply touched by the stone body she has turned into. She turned around and said loudly to the disciples of the Jingyi school, From now on, this mountain will never be open to the public. This place will be listed as the forbidden area of Mount Longhu of the Jingyi school. No disciple of the Jingyi school is allowed to step into this mountain without permission, and no one is allowed to touch the stone body of Ao Wushuang. Do you understand? The disciples of the Jingyi school were all moved by Ao Wushuang's infatuation and loyalty. They were awestruck and agreed in unison. Li Yundong bowed slightly to Zhang Ling and the disciples of Jingyi school and thanked them. On behalf of Su Chan and the Fox Zen school, I would like to thank you all. As he said this, he held the little girl tightly in his arms, turned around and walked down the mountain. But after a few steps he turned around again, looked at the people of the Jingyi school and said, Since ancient times, although humans and demons have not been the same kind, it has been extremely difficult for them to coexist. But think about it, why can't we tolerate the existence of a different kind around us? What did Ao Wushuang do wrong? Who did she hurt? Was it wrong for her to pursue her own happiness and love? If this is also wrong, then why have we eulogized Zhuo Wenjun and praised Zhu Yingtai for thousands of years? Even Bai Sujin is the target of our praise. But if the common people can accept a snake demon, then why can't we accept a fox demon? Li Yundong said with a pained expression, You are all reasonable cultivators. I am deeply sad about what happened today. I hope that nothing like this will happen again in the future. Li Yundong's words made everyone's eyes flicker thoughtfully. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin looked at Li Yundong in a daze. Their hearts were surging and no one knew what they were thinking. Almost there, after Li Yundong bowed to the people of the Jingyi school one last time, he turned around and went down the mountain with the unconscious Su Chan in his arms, leaving the people of the Jingyi school sighing. When Li Yundong and the others returned from Japan, they went straight to Mount Longhu because they were worried about Ao Wushuang's safety. At this time, when they returned home in Tianan City, as soon as they entered the door, they saw the little foxes sitting on the sand or carpet in the living room, their heads drooping like frosted eggplants. Some looked sad while others were gently wiping tears. Only Yuan Hongling and Lin Miao, who were standing to one side, saw Li Yundong and the others. They immediately beamed with joy and quickly greeted them. Yuan Hongling was a little excited and asked Zi Yuan, "Shiji Zi Yuan, you're back? How is it?" As she said this, her eyes fell on Su Chan and she immediately asked nervously, "What's wrong with Su Chan? Is she injured? Where is she? Is it serious?" Zi Yuan smiled at her but didn't say anything. She just looked at the little foxes in the living room and asked with her eyes, "What happened?" Yuan Hongling glanced at Li Yundong and said in a low voice, "You can ask them yourself." Li Yundong saw that the little foxes were all crying, completely unlike their usual clever and lively selves. After being stunned for a moment, he thought to himself, "Do they know about Ao Wushuang? The news spread so fast?" He asked, "What's wrong with you? Do you know what happened to Ao Wushuang?" At this moment Ling Yu raised her head. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. She wiped her eyes and choked, "Sect Master, Sixth Martial Uncle and the rest, they..." As she spoke she began to choke with sobs. Almost there and Li Yundong was shocked. What happened to Chao Yi and Lu Yuehong? Did something happen to them too? Ling Yu was stunned. She let out a choj sound and said with teary eyes, "Also? What do you mean by that?" Li Yundong frowned and said in a low voice, "What happened? Don't cry yet." "Well, I won't cry. But as Ling Yu spoke, she wiped her tears with her hand. She pursed her lips and couldn't help crying again, but it seemed that the more she wiped, the more tears flowed. "Sixth Martial Uncle and the rest don't want us anymore." As soon as she finished speaking, the little foxes burst into tears. For a moment, the living room was filled with the sound of crying, and the atmosphere was gloomy, as if a mourning hall was being held. Even though Li Yundong's cultivation was high, he was still a little flustered by the crying. Li Yundong couldn't help but ask, "They don't want you anymore? What's going on?" At this time, a little fox next to him handed over a piece of paper while crying. Li Yundong took it and saw a few lines of beautiful words written on it. It was a letter of farewell written by Chao Yi. Li Yundong took a closer look and saw that it said, "Hello, Sect Master. By the time you read this letter, senior sister Lu Yuehong and I will have completely left the Fox Zen School and left you. I believe that now the Sect Master already knows the reason for our departure, so this farewell is very sudden. However, we are too ashamed to face the Sect Master again, and we don't even have the courage to apologize to him in person. These days, Sect Leader, you have treated us well. We are not stone people with hearts of stone. How could we not be touched? We understand. However, the former Sect Leader Lu Yi has raised and taught us, and the Sect Leader has protected us. Therefore, senior sister and I have been suffering in the middle. Every day is like a year and we can't sleep at night. The plan of the Fox Zen School has nothing to do with us, but we have been deeply indebted to Lu Yi for raising us. We have to repay him, but we also feel ashamed to face the Sect Master, so we have to say goodbye and leave in a dilemma. However, Shiji and I are the ones to blame for all this. Su Chan, Ling Yu and the others don't know anything. I hope the Sect Master won't blame them. As the saying goes, ignorance is not a crime. If they leave the Sect Master, they will be like rootless duckweed without a source. Although the world is big, there is no place for them. Shiji and I have looked around the cultivation world today. Only the Sect Master is broad-minded and has a profound cultivation quotient, which is enough to protect them from the secular world. We hope that the Sect Master will be merciful and not abandon them." When Li Yundong saw this, he couldn't help but raise his head and sigh. He said in a low voice of reproach, "Nonsense, it's really nonsense." The little foxes next to him looked at Li Yundong timidly, but they didn't know whether he was talking about them or Chao Yi and Lu Yuehong. The little foxes were very familiar with Li Yundong, so they were really afraid that he would leave them behind. If that happened, they really didn't know where to go. Zi Yuan and Zhou Qin couldn't help but curiously poke their heads over to take a look. After that, they looked at each other in dismay. After exchanging glances, they both retreated to the side and kept their mouths shut. Li Yundong looked around and saw that the little foxes were all looking at him. Their timid looks could even soften an Iron Man's heart. He was also a person who was extremely protective of women, so he couldn't help but sigh and say, "Why are you all looking at me like this? Are you afraid that I'll leave you behind too?" Although the little foxes had suddenly changed and were a little confused, they were still very clever. Ling Yu immediately took Li Yundong's arm and said with an aggrieved expression, "Sect Master, you can't leave us alone. If you don't care about us, we will become unwanted children." As she said this, the little foxes couldn't help but cry one by one. Li Yundong felt a little headache from crying. He sighed again and said, "How old are you? You're still children. Don't cry, don't cry. Did I say that I would leave you alone? You think I'm too ruthless, don't you?" The little foxes were stunned, and then they blurted out at the same time, "Really?" Li Yundong sighed and said, "Of course. When have I ever lied to you?" The little foxes immediately burst into laughter and cheered in unison. One by one they squeezed in front of Li Yundong to hug him. At this time, Li Yundong was still holding Su Chan in his arms. Surrounded by the little foxes, he was almost drowned in the crowd. Zhou Qin and Zi Yuan couldn't help but look at each other again and sigh in their hearts. The two of them sighed that Li Yundong was good in all aspects, but he was too protective of women and had an extremely good relationship with them. In addition, they sighed, with so many little foxes, how could he establish a sect in the future? This was really worrying. After Li Yundong comforted the little foxes, he told them about Ao Wushuang. But as soon as he finished speaking, the little foxes burst into tears one by one. "Little Shirshu Wushuang doesn't want us anymore." Li Yundong saw that they had finally stopped crying, but at this time they were crying again. This time he didn't know how to persuade them. He just winked at Zi Yuan, Zhou Qin, Ruan Hongling and Lin Miao. Then he went into the room and put Su Chan, who had fallen asleep from crying, on the bed. After covering her with the quilt, he gently retreated. Li Yundong took Zi Yuan and the others to the opposite door. The little fox's crying was blocked by several walls, and they suddenly became much lighter. Li Yundong also breathed a sigh of relief. He said to Zi Yuan, "Now the outside world knows that we have defeated the mystical silver fox, but in fact we have our own difficulties. The mystical silver fox is now hiding in the purple gold luo pan. If we go in rashly, she may defeat us one by one. But if the mystical silver fox doesn't come out, I can't think of any good way. Zi Yuan, you have seen a lot. Do you have any good ideas?" Zi Yuan thought for a moment and said hesitantly, "There is a way." Li Yundong's eyes lit up and he said, "Tell me." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.